With the devastating defeat of the Labyrinth Master, our boy has finally managed to beat the highest difficulty level in this game, a game known as Abyss of the Labyrinth. The whole speedrun was absolutely exhilarating for him, all thanks to the intense challenge this higher difficulty threw at him. The fact that it was his own critical thinking and strategies that led him to this victory has him on cloud 9. He's getting so full of himself that he's already planning to build his entire career uploading strategy videos on YouTube. With the previous level cleared, another difficulty level unlocks. But this time, the game is prompting something completely unprecedented. He's been granted a chance to dive headfirst into the final difficulty level, namely, Developer difficulty. Before entering, he's also given the option to select a new special ability, something he's never seen before in this game. Being the mage class lover he is, he also makes sure to pick the mage class for his in-game character, just like before. The only difference is, this time, he dumps all of his stat points into a single attribute, his intelligence. As soon as he confirms, a blinding light starts enveloping the apartment building, and next thing he knows, our boy is getting grilled by some random-ass NPC. The poor dude doesn't even remember inhaling coke, so how the hell is he having these twisted hallucinations? The NPC flings him onto the ground hard enough to cause him pain. The pain helps him realize that he isn't cracked or tripping. This shit is as real as it gets. His neck is chained up, just like the rest of the slaves standing in front of that portal. The old man on stage begins rattling off all the context-related details. Every slave has been given a magic wand and is expected to enter the labyrinth through the portal. The only reason these poor bastards ended up in this mess is because of the crimes they've committed. And this labyrinth is basically a God-sent opportunity for redemption. Anyone who makes it out alive can use the money earned in the maze to buy their freedom. Plus, they'll also get a chance to enroll in his magic academy. Of course, all of this sounds way too familiar to our boy, too familiar to feel even remotely comfortable. He doesn't need to think too hard to realize he's stuck inside the game, with no way out. The process of migrating into the labyrinth begins, in a group of 4. As they're walking through a horror-inducing enclosed pathway, everyone is shuddering with pure dread. More than anything, our boy is still trying to figure out how the hell he even ended up in this shitty situation. The body he's in now is the exact same character he created himself, Calum. The scariest part is that it's the no man's land they're currently standing in. It's a place crawling with all kinds of creepy-ass monsters thirsty for blood. Big or small, every last one of them wants a piece of human meat. If he doesn't figure something out fast, he's as good as dead. First, he tries to gauge the potential of his teammates. Though honestly, they don't seem all that promising. One is a scared fat fuck. The one in the middle looks like your average molester. And as for the elf girl, she's the type to hide behind the MC the moment anything remotely threatening appears. It's a full-on squad of oddballs, but that creepy molester dude definitely takes the cake with his weird-ass laughter. Our boy is pretty damn sure they're all doomed. This group is a recipe for disaster, the last thing Calum was expecting. Still, he tries to rally the whiny bunch, giving them a bit of hope that they can survive, just not if they keep reacting the way they are. But the fatty? He's so freaked out he bolts in the opposite direction like some fucked up kid who never listens. Calum already knows what's waiting for him. And right on cue, a nasty growling sound grabs their attention, followed by a spear slicing through meat, courtesy of a green bastard with 0 hair. The molester guy also doesn't get the chance to resist. A literal spear penetrates his skull, killing him instantly. Dude didn't even get to do anything. Only the elf girl is left. She drops to her knees while staggering back as she watches her teammates' brains splatter everywhere. The goblins don't give them even a second to mourn. They're already charging again. This isn't how things were supposed to go. With a single leap, the goblin closes the distance, and its blade is now just nanoseconds from slicing through our boy's neck. But then a miracle takes place. Plot armor, his special ability kicks in just in time. It's the ability he got after clearing the last level. The power to freeze time for 60 seconds. Time freezes instantly, so does the goblin. Calum looks at that sharp blade over his neck, a near-death experience he just escaped by hair. But time is ticking. He needs to make the most of these precious seconds. There's a catch though. Every time he moves while time is frozen, he loses 1 action point. 3 moves and the time will resume once again. He's already lost 1 point just from raising his wand in an attempt to block the blade. With only 3 movement points left, he's stuck. Not enough to dodge or counter what's coming. It is then he notices something. Speaking doesn't cost movement points. In fact, he can use voice commands to cast spells. So, he uses 2 more points to lift his wand, and with his final point, he casts his spell, Fireball. Time resumes just as the fireball materializes, unleashing a huge torrent of flames that incinerates every enemy in range. The elf girl can only watch with bewilderment. Thankfully, the threat's been neutralized for now. Still, that blade came way too close. Bro genuinely thought he was about to meet the heavens. He's just glad he didn't die like those 2 dumbasses. Panicking isn't the way to go. So far, everything that's happened has mirrored the events in the game exactly. And if that's the case, if this world really runs by the same rules, then no one knows how to beat it better than him. He's dead sure he's going to reach the exit. He drags himself over to the bodies of the fallen fellows and loots their corpses as they won't be needing the gear anymore. Then he turns to the timid girl, who just starts to freak even more. He wants to know what kind of spell her wand casts. She flails anxiously before stammering out that it's a lightning shock. It's her first time holding a wand, so she panicked instead of using it. Caleb already figured she was a lost cause, but hey, something is better than nothing. He gives her a little lecture about how to use the wand when shit hits the fan. Even a second of hesitation can get them both killed. Anyway, he decides it's time to keep moving and find the exit. He doesn't know who's pulling the strings up there, gods or developers. And frankly, he doesn't care. He's gonna flex his game knowledge to brave through it, no matter what. Many years ago, the labyrinth experienced a change like never before. A sudden, unstable eruption allowed monsters to come pouring out, unleashing their wrath and slaughtering countless adventurers and mages. Since then, the labyrinth has been trying to train a group of newbies called the Exploration Mages. Basically, the concept goes like this. Throw a random slave into the labyrinth, and if they survive, then they're fit to be nurtured more. That's the cruel reality of the game. However, even though Caleb knows about the original game's flow, he has yet to confirm if the game follows the same logic. He intends to stay sharp and alert for that. His newest partner, the elf girl, introduces herself as Yernil and thanks him for all his support. Both of them travel along, as Yernil curiously asks about Caleb's composed demeanor, which is strange considering that he talked to other people back on the slave ship. Now this revelation is like a lightning bolt hitting our boy, because it basically means that the people from the ship already know about his real identity. He's got to be even more careful from now on. The elf rattles on, revealing how she was raised in a fairy forest. Her backstory is sad, because the poor girl took up an errand job, not knowing that it was secretly a drug-dealing business. Apparently this chick was cooking some meth with Walter White. Long story short, that ended up getting her framed for her involvement. And because she couldn't pay the hefty fine, the poor elf met her fate as a slave. Hilariously, our boy doesn't appreciate her continuous yapping, even though he fully understands that Yernil is only trying to distract herself from her fear. He insists she stay quiet for a moment until it happens. A sudden system notification issues a 60-second countdown. But here's the neat part. Caleb thinks that he must have stepped on a trap, causing his body to activate time-freezing ability. But apparently the countdown goes on, while he uses this moment to analyze the situation properly. Generally, the traps on the first floor are notorious for using walls as their main source of attack. The best part is that there aren't any problems from Yernil's side, which means she's safe from hitting an accidental trap. However, when our boy quickly glances to check his side, he cautiously decides to spend one action point. Luckily, there aren't any holes on his side of the wall either, which means they should be safe. Next, he checks on the ceiling, which also appears to be safe. With those two possibilities eliminated, the chances of the trap being related to the floor rise increasingly higher. But first, let's deep dive into the four main types of floor traps on the first floor. The first one is a rather basic rising spike trap. Erecting from the ground, it takes out your feet immediately. The second trap is the detonating nail bomb, which is basically like a grenade, but only this time, dozens of nails are coming your way. If that thing pops off here, they'll be in deep trouble. The third kind of trap is the gas trap, which acts as a sleeping mechanism, knocking out people for long enough to have them hunted by the monsters. Finally, there's the pit trap. It's the most devastating trap because it directly launches you to the second floor. There's just no avoiding one's fate if you happen to encounter it. Now, here's the thing. His hourglass ability wouldn't have popped off if it hadn't detected a serious threat. This means that the spikes are out of the option because they're not a lethal threat. Unfortunately, while our boy's thinking wide and deep, his clock is starting to run down. He's down to the final 5 seconds and finds himself overwhelmed at the annoying puzzle. Realizing that he must venture on and explore the risk on his own, Caleb lifts his foot and smacks it powerfully on another block. Coincidentally, he expires his action energy blocks in the same duration, causing the end of the turn and initiating a cooldown sequence. By the way, the clumsy elf quickly trips over him because of him. But it wasn't an accident. It's actually Caleb who just saved her life as he reveals that all this time, the elf had stepped on a trap. This particular trap is the detonating nail trap, which means the moment he lifts his foot, the exploding nails will strike them both down, rendering serious injuries. That's also the reason he replaced his foot with her, because the trap is like a pressure mine that requires some weight reaction. Anyway, Yernil's genuinely freaking out, wondering what they'll do, now that they're stuck. Our boy quickly reminds her of the barrel they passed by just a while ago. The elf also remembers about the barrel, so he tells her to quickly fetch it. Running off at once, Yernil promises to return with the barrel. While she's away, the mage reflects that every trap has its counter, and for this particular one, a heavy object's replacement is a good way to subdue it. He thinks Yernal won't take longer than 10 minutes to return with the barrel, except 30 whole minutes just passed and the dumbass elf is nowhere to be found. It's starting to make him worry, because if Yernil ends up getting caught in another trap, she's cooked, and our boy's gonna wind up having at least 10 more holes in his body. Fear grapples his mind as he starts to wonder if she met her doom at the hands of monsters. This is a fucked up situation, because his act of selflessness could result in his own demise. Thankfully, the clumsy elf returns with the barrel. Poor girl has been struggling to roll with it because it's so heavy. It's the reason she took her sweet-ass time. But our boy doesn't care anymore. He's just glad to know he'll get out in one piece. And yes, the one piece is real. They end up replacing him with the barrel. Next up, he uses his telekinesis magic wand to lift the barrel, in order to annihilate any surrounding traps that they haven't yet discovered. With a simple move command, Calum is capable of causing the barrel to lift, setting the trap off and detonating an enormous explosion. Yernil is rendered speechless, looking at the poor girl's shocked face. Good thing our heroes survived once again. With this experience in mind, Calum places importance on looking out for monsters and traps from now on. Though he's got to look out for both potential hazards, the silver lining is his hourglass magic ability, allowing him to distribute 10 points among his base stats. If he can focus on using those points to his advantage, he can always be one step ahead because of his ability. For now, Calum insists that he spends his points wisely on his intelligence stat, believing that it's going to help him clear floor 1. But then there's also the drawback of his ability. He doesn't possess absolute control over casting the start of his turn, because it happens right after he faces a threat to his life. Then there's the problem of action points getting reduced with each spell casting. While he's busy in his thoughts, a sudden goblin duo pops up as a free test subject for our boy. He's glad that these ugly-faced midgets are here, because the system immediately kicks into his hourglass mechanics. First up, our boy uses his fireball spell, expending 1 action point. Now that he's used the spell, a 5-second cooldown is placed on it before he can recast the same. After the cooldown finishes, the mage ramps up a second fireball, expending yet another point. He understands that each action point is reduced by 1 spell cast, and with this, his turn ends. The blazing destructive fireballs quickly make their way and demolish both of the goblins, detonating upon contact with their bodies and leaving them burning in a pathetic state. With both of them eliminated, Calum theorizes that he can reach his max damage potential by casting 4 fireball strikes in 1 turn. By the way, the elf is out here getting swooned by his powers. You see, she points out that not only does he have an immensely fast casting speed, but he also commands the use of magic without any incantations. While he's incredible, the poor elf dreads herself for being pathetic when it comes to her usage of magic. She deprecates her own worth, apologizing for being helpless. Well, it's not like she's wrong. Even our boy thinks that the girl is high-key dog water when it comes to being a warrior or mage. However, because Yernil is an elf, she must have some specialty to her athleticism. So to test that out, the mage inquires about her maximum jump height. Thinking about her answer, she responds that she could do it up to 4 meters in the forest. That's right, folks. This chick officially qualifies for the WNBA. She's gonna be the next Michael Jordan. Well, Calum is pretty stunned to hear that she can jump incredibly high, and fully understands that her agility must be off the charts in terms of stats. Naturally, he tests her strength by handing her a bow that he picked up from the body of a dead goblin. The weapon appears strange, but surprisingly, Yernil actually has experience in archery. She loved shooting in the fairy forest. That's a good thing, because this way, she can always help him out by covering him from behind. The elf is really happy that she finally got a role of her own to play, and she accepts it without any objections. Well, Calum on the other hand isn't so fortunate. All he could do in the end was collect multiple wands to his names. Bro's gonna end up with a collection like General Grievous from Star Wars. The atmosphere grows tense as Yernil senses the presence of someone from behind. Alarmed, the mage quickly turns back, but there's no one there. It's so dark that one can't even see from afar. It makes her wonder if the elf is playing a prank, until Yernil explains that she heard a sound in the distance. This sparks an idea in his mind. Remember, she's an elf, which means she has heightened physical abilities. To test his theory, Calum instructs her to close her eyes shut. The girl is lost and doesn't know what he's up to now. She decides to follow through with his instructions. When her eyes are shut, Calum throws a bunch of stones off in the distance and asks about their number and exact location. Shockingly, Yernil is able to identify the exact location with the number of steps, implying that her affinity to sound is on another level. This confirms that she possesses the unique skill called sound mapping. Next up, our boy asks her about the number of people following them. To that, the elf explains that there are 4 headed their way. This is bad, really bad. They're outnumbered and Calum knows it. If they end up facing another party like this, they'll have a hard time keeping up. So he chooses the safe route and tells Yernil to make a run for it so they can hide. Both of them are crossing the path, marching ahead of a puddle placed between. Their plan is to hide around the corner until the party arrives in the same spot. A while later, both of them are positioned well, prepared to confront anyone that comes their way. The footsteps grow closer and closer as Calem and Yernil find themselves in a pinch. Suddenly, our boy reveals himself ahead of the squad, demanding that they stop at once. He then confronts them, questioning why these guys are tailing them around. The leader of the party is a baldhead, who explicitly states that they don't care about the mage. Instead, this psychotic clown has his eyes set on the elf girl traveling with him. The opposing party members only care about getting their hands on the pretty elf, so much so that they're threatening our boy to surrender her over if he wants a chance to live. In response, both Yernil and Calem are sharply aiming at their enemies. The slime ball with ugly eyes is confident in his incredible shield, which is capable of withstanding the might of low-tier magic without any problem. Not to mention it's also a pretty good defensive weapon against the typical bow and arrow, you know, the one Yernil is using right now. The guy advises our boy to not even bother with his chanting, because they'll kill him even sooner than he can finish his first chant. From the looks of things, these guys are pretty damn confident in their ability to take them down. The numbers are on their side, so the bald-head leader suggests forming a large party involving the elf. However, these disgusting men have their own plans for Yernil after she joins the party. In fact, the scumbag party leader is salivating at the thought of it. Let's turn to the side of our heroes. The poor elf is quivering for support, wondering what Calem's got up his sleeve. Meanwhile, our boy is currently reflecting on the situation, how he's never going to follow through with the idea of sacrificing Yernil. With just one look, he's able to infer what kind of men they are. It's far too risky to involve them in a party too. So our boy finally breaks his silence, threatening to kill them if they don't fudge off at once. Hearing him finally take a stance gives the elf some assurance that our boy's got something planned. However, the enemy leader doesn't view his empty threat as anything to be afraid of. Calem emphasizes that he stands by what he said. Hearing that, the opposing party leader realizes that there's only one option left then. He orders his men to kill the mage at once. That's when the hourglass system kicks into motion, initiating the deciding factor of 60 seconds in which our boy will make the winning move. With the countdown started, the mage quickly thinks of the current situation. He understands that maybe his opponents have underestimated his usage of 2 wands, treating him as a defensive mage at best. However, that assumption will be their own undoing, as Calem is going to use that to his advantage and annihilate the shit out of these fuckers. First off, he targets the puddle just underneath the party's feet. With a touch of the lightning-type spell called Lightning Shock, Calem should be able to electrocute at least one of them with a powerful stun. Top it off with the water, and it's possible for him to take them all out in one blow. Investing his first energy block into his first spell, Calem unleashes the Lighting Surge ability, quickly targeting the puddle underneath. With the lighting already underway, his next initiative is to get rid of the shield, rendering his enemies completely defenseless and easy to kill. So for his second energy cast, he releases the Uchiha clan's Fireball Jutsu from Naruto. The turn hasn't finished just yet. With 2 spell castings underway, he still has more than enough time to think of the rest of his moves. For his third spend, he targets the bald guy, in other words, the douchebag leader of the party. And that's how he ended up expiring all of his energy blocks by releasing a bunch of fireballs, as well as a lightning shock spell, to completely obliterate his enemies. The spells kick into overdrive. The lightning shock stuns all 4 of these bastards for a good minute. With the initial stun finished, the party leader is defenseless because he's just dropped his shield and weapons. Now, the incoming fireball makes its way, bursting into the puddle and unleashing a blinding vapor. With the party leader completely confused and isolated, the remaining fireball specifically comes targeting his head. An enormous explosion blows out with the spell detonating at last. Right away, our boy signals the elf to make her move and unleash her arrows. The elf doesn't hesitate for a split second and releases the arrow into the blind vapor. Even though the steam is difficult to see through, Yernil's unique advantage to sound map the area gives her an easy edge to aim without any problems. Calem directs her to keep on shooting among the steam, while he quickly thinks of his next move. The problem is, he's currently on a cooldown, and if the elf hasn't taken out at least one of those men with her arrows, they'll be in deep trouble by the time the enemy party unleashes its counterattack. Our boy is damn near certain that the bald head ended up getting struck by the fireball, which only leaves his underlings to deal with. The scene grows tense by every moment as the cooldown timer takes its time to replenish, causing Calem severe anxiety. He quickly turns to the elf, instructing her to target the warrior while he's charging up his powers. But to his utter shock, he is baffled to learn that Yernil has already killed them all. It doesn't make sense because she only shot 2 arrows at best. The veil of mystery is lifted at last, when the steam settles out and the corpses of the party members are made visible. They've been brutally slaughtered thanks to the arrows hitting all of their fatal spots. This elf was able to somehow manage a triple kill with just 2 arrows, showing her incredible talent when applied correctly. So much so that even our boy is starting to feel afraid of the innocent elf. Yernil expresses that she felt the same fear. It's just that she tried really hard to make that shot connect. Anyway, The bald head ended up surviving, but the same can't be said for his hands, as they blew out in an effort to block the fireball. The scumbag is whimpering in pain. His previous arrogance has been replaced with fear and curiosity, as he questions the mage's true identity. The fact that Calum casted magic without even issuing a single chant strikes him speechless. To see an overpowered mage like him in a place like this, the party leader is baffled at what someone like him is doing here. The same guy who was gooning to the thought of obtaining the elf for himself is now out here preaching out about the unfairness of this world. Calum gives him a reality check that it's the baldhead's own fault for doing reckless shit in the dungeon. In response, the party leader roars at him for even suggesting the idea that they came to this dungeon willingly. His personal story is also a bit sad, as he was expelled for not having any magic abilities and was sold into slavery, leaving him little choice in the matter. In the end, it pisses him off that Calum has an absurd amount of magic talent, because if he possessed it instead of our boy, his life wouldn't have ended up as a dog's death. As he's spouting about the cruelty of life, our boy simply stares him down with cold eyes. Even Yahello doesn't know what to do, and apologizes for having killed the men with her weapon. Calum reminds her that an apology isn't necessary, as they did what was necessary in order to survive in the dungeon. He also understands that it's her first ever battle, and not just that, Yahello even presses on that she's never tried killing someone before this. The mage assures her that he's also never used magic on someone else before this situation, but it's something they both have to get used to in order to survive. With that cleared out, he wants to make a thorough inspection of the opposing party's loot to collect any resources. By the way, Calum is personally confused about his unnatural calmness, even though it's the first time he's killed someone. If it happened in the real world, he would be having a proper breakdown questioning reality. But right now, it's almost like none of those details even matter. It's like a fake reality world to him where the consequences aren't real, so it doesn't affect him much. Remember when he faced off those hungry goblins? That was the first time he realized that he was going to die. And now, the reverse has happened. His mental strength has grown stronger and sharper to adapt to intense situations. He takes a moment to observe the environment, addressing the disgusting smell of blood and the incinerated flesh of his enemies. One thing's for certain, he'll never get used to this kind of setting. Anyway, the elf returns to our boy with a bunch of stuff. She's found a nice backpack, but apparently they don't know what it's about. The elf assumes that it must be a stolen item from another adventurer. They go on to discover a whole bunch of different items from the bag, but the most important of them all is the adventurer's identity card. The person is called Abyssin, and it appears that they have an F-rank evaluation for their skills at the Labyrinth Guild. Yahello suspects that Abyssin shouldn't be related to any of the 4 idiots they just defeated, meaning the bag belongs to him, and that it's possible that he's already dead. Our boy believes it's also possible for Abyssin to have been left behind all on his own to die. He does remember that the game sequence offered a ton of different possibilities to die. Let's talk about the bald head again. From a general observation, it can be said that this guy is making the best use of his combat and positioning. The bald head's biggest downfall is that he was unready for our boy's brilliant strategy to use his spells. The thing is, Calum believes that if their positions were switched, even he wouldn't be able to fend off a strategy like that. Basically, he's trying to emphasize the point that he's just one terrible situation away from ending up dead, because it's the hourglass magic that is responsible for covering his shortcomings. The mage doesn't like the idea of relying on pure luck to navigate the dungeon ahead, because then it's only a matter of time until he meets his match. He signals the elf to get the move on, and also makes a declaration in his heart. This time, he'll plan out everything with a strategy that is devoid of any flaws, because it's not just a game anymore, his very own life is on the line. The same game that he doesn't consider to be his real world has now become an inescapable reality for him, a reality that he must survive at all costs. The walk through the dungeon continues, exhausting the elf as they've been dealing with 12 hours of non-stop goblin hunting. When our boy finally offers a checkpoint to take some rest, Yahello beams up with happiness and agrees. So a little while later, they make a cozy little stay by the fire. Yahello hands a piece of bread to the mage, offering him some food to replenish his health. As our boy is munching on his bread, the elf addresses him and thanks him for saving her life twice in one day. Of course, Calum doesn't think much of it and credits her for playing a key role in every battle. Hilariously, if they had handed over the poor girl to the party leader, things would have ended up miserable for her. The very thought reduces her to an adorable ball of cuteness. She's at the verge of tears when Calum refers to her as a friend that he values. To end the night, the elf offers to keep watch, allowing our boy to get the rest he deserves. He quickly bolts off to sleep, which initiates the system's internal rest mode. Upon entering rest mode, Calum strangely experiences a level-up boost from 1 to 3. Even he doesn't get what it's about, and wonders if the leveling mechanic is triggered only when one is about to enter a state of rest. The system displays his stats, which are pretty basic for now. He's got 2 points to invest in any of them. Carefully reflecting on his choices, Caleb understands that his intelligence stat must have progressed as a result of his dual-wielding wangs. In his original run for the game, he simply focused on maximizing his intelligence stat. So just like last time, he invests both of the points into it. Interestingly, the system also offers a chance for the player to check the status of other party members. In this case, Yurnil has also significantly leveled up. To distribute her points, Caleb has to take responsibility. He's pretty impressed by her natural high agility thanks to being an elf and all. She's also incredibly skilled when it comes to dexterity, and then there's the special skill called sound mapping that she has, allowing her to detect enemy footsteps through the means of sound. This girl is genuinely out here playing the game with the best headphones thanks to this skill. Anyway, our boy keeps it short and sweet, prioritizing boosting her agility stat. With that, the rest of the sequence ends, as Caleb jumps back into the game's reality. When he awakens, his so-called watch guard is already at the verge of falling asleep. He tells her to rest up while he keeps guard in her stead. The cute elf quickly jumps to her cozy bed, having desired a long night's rest for a long time. Interestingly, she spots her friend setting up the shield and sleepily asks what he's up to. Fixing his attention at the shield, Caleb explains that he's testing something. The sleepy elf has no idea what he means, until our boy goes ballistic on the test shield as he chants the use of his fireball spell. The released fireball annihilates the shield completely. Remember when he boosted his intelligence stat? Well, that also boosts the strength of all of his spells, which means the rest mode sequence is genuinely a great thing to have. The shield is left with half of its original size by the time the smoke clears, impressing the likes of even Yurnil. As much as she is amazed, the cozy elf tumbles down in exhaustion and falls asleep right as Caleb is telling her about their next plan. He doesn't blame her though, knowing that she's been through hell in the past day. Anyway, let's skip ahead to the next morning. Both our heroes are well rested and ready to go. The elf is curious and growing impatient to locate the exit gate. Here's the big problem about exit gates. They're completely randomized by a factor of luck. In this case, Caleb thinks that his luck is the worst thing he's ever had ever since Truck Kun sent his ass to this world. With 3 paths open to take, Caleb succumbs to defeat, realizing it's going to take them an entire week to get this over with. However, in the very next room, he is stunned to lay his eyes on the exit gate. It's crazy that they managed to stumble across it. But the problem is, they're going to have to deal with the adventurers guarding the gate. So, the mage quickly does a sharp assessment of their abilities. He believes that these guards are probably a veteran party, which means they can't afford to make even a single mistake, or else it'll cost them everything. The interesting-looking trio decides to make its move first, questioning if both Caleb and Yurnil belong to the slave team of Magic University. Without a second thought, our boy quickly agrees, while also internalizing the awkward situation happening before his eyes. The dwarf addresses Emma, questioning when the last batch of slaves was sent here. As she recalls, it was around 10 a.m. This means that it's taken up more than a day for this duo to arrive and reach the exit. The dwarf is surely impressed and quickly points out his understanding of Yurnil's strength as an archer, instead of choosing to stick with magic. While she's out here bumming out, Caleb confirms his confidence over wielding the double wands. The dwarf is impressed that both of them aren't trying to be modest with what they are. He wonders if the mage has access to a fireball wand, which again, our boy confirms that he does. The midget turns to Zakal for a final opinion on the situation, to which the beastman responds that it's pointless to waste time here. Emma chimes in and thinks that it's best to recruit the confident mage. However, confidence isn't enough because in the end, they're treating Caleb and Yurnil as part of a slave team. The 3 of them are engaged in a discussion, when suddenly Abyssin's name is brought up all of a sudden. The observant mage quickly catches it, and realizes that they're talking about the owner of the backpack. Sensing that it's a good opportunity to add his opinion, our boy questions if these guys have recently lost a mage friend. Of course, the 3 of them confirm the demise of Abyssin, who met his demise at the hands of a brutal black hornet on floor 1. Poor guy had quickly become a favorite of the dwarf, so much so that he felt pity over his death. Emma bursts in, reminding the idiot that Abyssin's soul is still intact because of her spell. All they need now is a revival scroll, and things will proceed smoothly in their favor. But here's the problem. Neither one of them can leave the exit gate to look for one. This adds more perspective about their situation in Caleb's eyes. He understands that behind the gate is a gate boss, and one of the requirements to challenge the boss is to have a mage in your party. That's the reason they're thinking about recruiting our boy. Caleb wonders what kind of boss lurks behind the door, because if it comes down to normal bosses like trolls or salamanders or even the brass goat, they can easily be defeated by this party. However, the real problem comes along if they're dealing with an aerial-type boss monster. But if that were the case, they would have demanded use of the elf instead of him. With all other possibilities knocked out, it only leaves room for one final assumption. Caleb confidently declares that the gate boss they're dealing with is the venomic spider. His words are so paralyzing that they stun all 3 of them for a good minute. Emma and Zakal are impressed by the slave magician's insight over the venomic spider. Even the dwarf can tell that Calum is someone who is well read when it comes to dungeons. You see, when it comes to the terrifying might of the venomic spider, it is nothing but horror and dread. The creature continuously spams lethal venom and releases annoying webs. This means that the exit room is actually fully webbed up already. If the party goes inside, they're gonna get destroyed because of its natural hunting ground. The boss monster will make quick work of all three, because even a single mistake will cost the party members their lives. The only possible solution to such a situation is the use of a fire mage, someone who can burn down the webs and limit the spider's movement. Killing it is the easy part with a proper strategy. Having figured out their intentions, Calum understands why they need him. Emma and Zakal are truly impressed by his calculating nature and want to board him on the team up. The party leader finds himself fully convinced as well, and allows the duo to join their group of three. But to his utter shock, a resounding no is slapped in his face. This is strange because just 1 second ago they were confident Calum was going to join them. Even the adorable elf doesn't understand why he's backing out from the offer. Our boy admits that it's a good opportunity for them to defeat the boss and use the exit gate to escape this hellhole. However, the one thing that the adventurers group conveniently failed to mention is the fact that only 4 members can use the exit gate at one time. The realization stuns the elf, as Calum further explains that with each addition of a person, the gate risks an accelerated collapse. At best, only 4 people can get the hell out. The fact that their party's only got 1 spot left means they only want the mage. And that also means that they're demanding Calum to abandon Yahello, a revelation that haunts the elf's feelings. The leader of the group is impressed by the young mage's deductive skills. He figured out their strategy in the span of a few moments. The leader offers an apology, emphasizing that they didn't mean to hide their true intentions. While they have nothing against taking both of them inside, the problem is, they only require 1 mage. With this, at least Calum is being presented with an opportunity to escape safe and sound. So they ruthlessly suggest that he leave his elf friend behind, causing the adorable thing to freeze in terror. Yahello doesn't know what Calum will say as everything hinges on his response. Here's the issue. The offer is actually tempting. After all, he needs to preserve his own life above all. But even then, if he can't escape the life of a slave after escaping the labyrinth, they'll toss him back in here again. Ahead of him are 3 competent adventurers, but there's no telling if they'll betray him in the future or not. It's entirely possible that he'll be ditched to another party full of slaves again. And if that happens, he won't ever be able to come across someone with Yahello's brilliant abilities. That's why he breaks his silence and makes it known that he will never abandon his elf friend. Calum's declaration shocks the life out of the adventurers as well as his own friend. Instead of making such a ruthless choice, he offers a different proposal. The mage wants these guys to hire him for a price. The idea is ridiculous in the eyes of the leader, because this guy is basically asking for a flat payment instead of getting a chance to escape through the exit gate. The fact that he's making this decision entices the dwarf, but he still goes on to hear his offer. When Calum names his price to be 10,000 gold, it gets on the nerves of the leader and frightens his friend Yahello, because this kind of price is a godly amount when it comes to money. Our boy knows all about it. The thing is, with the stones and backpack he's acquired from the initial floor, if they sold everything they owned, it still wouldn't go beyond 2,000 gold. Even when it comes to the price of 1 slave, both Yahello and Calum are weighed equal to 6,000 gold. This means that if he somehow acquires 10,000 gold, he can break free of his slave position and secure some funds in the process. The situation is flipped over its head, causing the party to argue with each other again. Now these guys are special. Even our boy understands that Emma, the cleric of their party, isn't easy to acquire. This means these guys are packing a crap ton of money and should be able to offer such an amount. There's also the fact that fatigue is catching up to them, and they are growing restless to confront the boss. In the eyes of the mage, he also thinks Abyssin is one other critical reason they have to fight for. In order to revive the dude's spirit, they have to use a resurrection scroll, which has a certain time limit for souls. That means they're desperate for a quick solution, once again adding to Calum's advantage. The beastmen of the group thinks that they should move forward with the deal, seeing as there isn't any other mage around to help them. Calum also intends to secure a proper oath using Emma's status as a cleric, such that they aren't betrayed after the deal is made. Emma assures him that she can do that for him for their agreement. Displeased with the negotiation, the dwarf offers 9,000 gold as a final price. But our boy loves to fight his way through a negotiation and bumps up to 9,500. The dwarf tries convincing him, but he doesn't budge. In the end, the dwarf reluctantly has to agree to Calum's price. He can't believe that he just got hustled by a slave mage, and it only happened because of their circumstances. However, our boy promises that the deal is going to go in their favor, and they'll find that out soon enough. The leader is hoping that his words are truthful, while Emma happily welcomes both the dwarf and Calum to come along. Now that they're moments from entering the room, she chants a contractual spell to form a covenant of their terms. Vertinen's party promises to pay the full amount upon the mission completion, once they're finally close to exiting the gate. And in the case that the party is obliterated, the contract will not take effect. Both parties swear the oath, representing their side, and that settles the matter of trust. Now that the boring stuff is over, it's time to head right into the creepy dungeon. Right upon entering, we can see that the entire room is filled with spider webs. What's worse is that the room is dark, causing them problems locating their target. If the boss is hidden well, they're gonna have a hard time. Suddenly, the mage glances at the interactable neutral objects. These are explosives that can be used in times of crisis. Anyway, the dwarf alarms them to watch out for any webs on the floor because they'll be tough to step out of. Meanwhile, our boy is looking around, trying to get a glimpse of the boss. Fearing that the slave mage is overdoing his role, Vertanen reminds him that his job is to simply burn the ceiling webs. Suddenly, the party experiences true terror as the boss monster initiates its first strike. The web is aimed directly at the dwarf, who is inches away from being trapped by it. But thanks to his amazing reflexes, Bro knocks it away with a powerful swing and roars at the mage to blast the damn ceiling with his fireball magic. The venomic spider doesn't even give them time to breathe and launches more of its web attacks. Of course, if this is how things are going to be, then even Calum thinks it's a good thing that the boss is attacking, because now they know where to look. Knowing that this is his one chance to deal a ton of damage, the Hourglass magic ability kicks in, initiating the start of his turn. 3 fireballs are released back to back, expending his energy points to 1. He casts the final fireball and consumes all 4 action points, ending his turn. The destructive fireballs spiral their way to reach the boss monster. One of them is aimed directly at the creature's face. Suffering a tremendous explosion at point blank, the venomic spider is dealt a first blow, leaving the adventurer's party at a loss for words. They're dazzled by Calum's 4-way casting without any incantation. With this window of opportunity created, our boy roars at this squad to seize the moment while they've got the chance. To add on to the burst damage, he instructs Yernil to do her part. The elf quickly releases a bunch of arrows, but instead of piercing its flesh, the arrows are deflected by its hard skin. This forces him to stop Yernil from attacking, because it's clearly not working. Just a moment after, the column of flame rises to an incredible height. The mage quickly instructs the cleric to put up a magic barrier, which she focuses on doing right away. Next, he tells the beastman to initiate the attack the moment the barrier is set up. Of course, these seasoned veterans are annoyed that he's ordering them around, but they still choose to trust his plan. The beastman dashes ahead while the venomic spider is no longer in a burning state. The creature is prepared to strike down the incoming adventurer with its sharp fangs. But this guy stands on business and activates his lightning-fast ambush attack, cutting the spider's leg and causing it a great deal of pain. Now that the spider has nowhere to go, it plants itself on its back for one final maneuver. Vertanen signals his team to get ready as the creature's about to detonate on itself, allowing the cleric to set up a constellation shield barrier before it happens. Calum breaks down their maneuvers and understands that these guys know the ins and outs of dealing with the monster. However, he's got an even better strategy than blocking the explosion. Extending his ice wand, our boy uses his Ice Lance spell to terminate any chances of explosion in the first place. The icicle lance stabs the spider's belly, causing a spreading effect that slowly freezes it all over. Next, the mage instructs Vertanen the dwarf to unleash one final attack and demands the cleric to step down. Unfortunately, they're so confused that they're not listening to his advice at all, causing our boy to burst in anger as he begs them to listen to him for once. This is why his experience of playing the game was much easier, because he didn't have to convince people to do obvious things. Anyway, the dwarf listens to his command, bursts forth, launching himself to the air with a final aerial swing of his axe. Using his signature Great Shattering Cleave technique, the dwarf slices the venomic spider's head clean. With that, the boss monster is officially defeated. The group celebrates their victory, not knowing what's about to happen next. Only Calum knows that right after you defeat the spider, there's a hidden mechanic that has a chance of triggering upon its death. What he fears the most is the chance of a second phase spiraling into effect. While the adventurer group is busy celebrating, Yernil is surprised and wonders why Calum appears to be on high alert. He tells the elf to look up for one moment. She follows his instructions and stares at the ceiling, as horror quickly rears its head. Yernil's scream attracts the attention of the main party. The dwarf and the cleric are incapable of seeing anything clear on the dark ceiling, but their beastman fellow is on high alert and senses trouble. You see, the ceiling is where the venomic spider has laid hundreds of spider eggs, and as you can expect, they're at the verge of hatching. None of them anticipated a second phase. Even the dwarf didn't know about it. Sensing the need to act, Calum instructs the elf to quickly hurl the explosive barrel all the way here. She goes on to grab the barrel and gives it a solid push, allowing it to tumble through and make its way to the dwarf, who realizes that his next task is to throw the explosive barrel into the air. Next up, our boy tells the cleric to initiate a spell called Weapons Light on Yernil's arrow. She quickly chants the spell, imbuing the elf's arrow into a golden shimmer as Yernil aims towards the ceiling. She releases the golden arrow, which makes its way up top, lightening the center of the egg cluster. Locking down on its exact position, the dwarf thrusts the barrel with immense force. The barrel makes its way close to the cluster of eggs. And now for the final showdown. The hourglass kicks into motion as his turn commences with 4 consecutive fireballs. The turn immediately ends as all 4 of the destructive spheres reach their way up to the explosive barrel. The moment they make contact with the barrel, it generates a mighty explosion. Hilariously, the adventurers are once again stumped by Calem's sudden and consecutive casting, making them wonder if clearing a boss fight was always effortless like this. Anyway, Vertinen has acquired a good grasp of our boy's strength, even though he's a slave mage. It makes him wonder about Calem's identity, but that's not the important part. The important part is that the exit gate has finally appeared, allowing them a pathway to escape. With the mission completed, the mage takes a breath of relief, internalizing his frustrations. Even though they easily cleared the boss fight with the help of a party, it's still not as easy as clicking a few buttons in a game. Before going on ahead, the beastman gets ticked off and confronts our boy, demanding to know about his identity. Funnily enough, the same scary dude turns into a mellow guy and sings praises of Calem's excellent battle strategy. Our boy jokes around that he should have tried killing the adventurer squad so both he and Yurnil could escape on their own. Jokes and banter aside, the dwarf is pretty impressed about his level of skill. It makes him wonder what kind of job Calem was doing before he got dragged on as a slave. The real answer is that our boy has always been addicted to the game from day one, but he can't exactly say that. Instead, he has to make up an excuse about his past as a slave at a magic academy. Vertinen senses that the kid's not ready to let out the real reason, and he respects that like a Chad. Yurnil, on the other hand, is truly surprised that none of them were injured in the boss fight. It went smoother than they expected. Even the dwarf had low expectations, but Calem's performance proved him wrong. Amusingly enough, it turns out that the only reason Vertinen even initiated the contract was because he thought our slave duo would die easily. Hearing that definitely gets on Yurnil's nerves as she gives him a mean look. As for our boy, Calem doesn't really care because he's going to get his money one way or another. Yeah, well, about that. Vertinen encounters that their contract hasn't reached fulfillment US yet. Even our boy agrees, while the beastman wonders what they are talking about, especially when the exit gate is right there. Calem reveals that their oath outlined that they have to reach the village through the gate in order to fulfill the contract. Yurnil is confused, while Emma backs up his words, emphasizing that the terms stated exactly that. The main requirement is for the party to move through the exit gate, which means that if neither of them are able to cross the gate, the contract won't be fulfilled. Even though the exit gate is right there, the conditions will only be fulfilled once the party crosses the exit gate. Side note to help you guys out. Crossing the gate is also the catch, because like previously established, only 4 people can cross it at once, and it would result in one of them being left out. Emma makes it clear that the contract must always be followed down to the last letter. This means both of them will also have to pass through the gate, and if they don't cross, the contract will be rendered void. The complications are confusing for the 2 brain cells that Yurnil has in her mind. Calem, on the other hand, understands that no adventurer is stupid enough to have 10,000 gold on hand during a dungeon raid. Of course, he knew this right away. He knew about the idea of contracts being settled in the village. Turns out that the dwarf always knew that the contract wouldn't go through, which is why he accepted the absurd offer of 9,500 gold in the first place. He's just looking out for his team at the end of the day. Anyway, the beastman tells our boy that it'd be a waste of his talent if he died in a ditch like this. That's why he wants Calem to exact his revenge against the dwarf one day by stealing his wallet. Before heading out in the exit gate, Calem takes out Abyssin's backpack and reveals it to the group. The revelation shocks all 3, causing Vertinen to march forward in disbelief. He checks the backpack, understanding that it looks the same. Unfortunately, the mage reports that they couldn't find the body, they only managed to find the backpack after defeating another party. The news astonishes the beastman and the cleric, while the dwarf wonders if our boy is looking for a price for it. Surprisingly, Calem tells him that he only needs the backpack as a container, and doesn't care about the belongings inside. His words are hard-hitting for the dwarf, who was fully expecting him to make another offer related to gold. He laughs it off, promising to let them keep the backpack along with food supplies as long as they return Abyssin's belongings. Calem wasn't expecting to hear this from the dwarf, but it makes him wonder if the adventurer party is planning to take some time off. Vertinen and Emma reveal that they already have a resurrection scroll, so it's not going to be a problem. By the way, it turns out that Abyssin has died once before, so they use the scroll to revive him. At this point, even our boy thinks that this guy should just retire from his line of work. The man keeps dying and is brought back to life. Anyway, Vertinen assures the mage that he's way more talented than Abyssin, and it makes them regret not hiring him sooner. While this is happening, Yurnil appears left out and distraught. At last, she finally raises her hand, breaking her silence. The elf makes a sudden request, desiring that Calem go along with the 3 of them and cross the exit gate. The sudden offer alarms all 3 of them, but it stuns our boy the most. The elf argues that even if one person from their party passed the exit gate, the contract would still be valid. That's why she wants him to go on and claim his rightful amount of 9,500 gold, and then he can stay with their party. Yahello is saying all of these things bravely, but Emma brings out the real question. What's going to happen to her? The dungeon is dangerous. So dangerous that even someone like Calum struggled to get this far. So if she's left alone, the elf will meet her demise. An unconfident, sad yet determined Yahello expresses that she has lost faith in finding another exit gate. She thinks that if Calum misses this opportunity, they'll die in the labyrinth. That's why she wants him to go, instead of chaining himself to her. It's true that the elf could have died all those times if not for the fact that he saved her. He's the only reason for her survival. The elf is eternally grateful for all he's done, and promises never to forget him. Her spirit breaks as tears stream down her face. Her only desire is for him to live on for both their sakes. The dwarf is sad, while the beastman argues that it's rude to recruit people from a dungeon in the first place. Vertinen explains that at best, he saw them as nothing more than a bunch of criminal slaves that were necessary to defeat the boss. However, he never anticipated that things would turn out this way. He's truly sorry, and this time, instead of treating them as slaves, he wants to treat them like a proper party. And that's why the dwarf is willing to make them another offer. First up, he plans to recruit Calum into his party, promising a 25% profit share of each mission and a payment of 9,500 gold. Now that's an excellent offer by every standard, so much so that even the mage is impressed. Hearing this, the elf pushes him to take up the offer as she can always manage on her own. She wants him to take control of his own future instead of dying for her sake. Interestingly enough, the system screen suddenly pops up with a proposal. If our boy chooses to stay with Yahello, he'll officially gain 100% trust with her. It's quite the sudden thing. Calum wasn't expecting to see an hourglass expansion opportunity screen. After gaining 100% with her, he can include her commands during his turn, which means they can effectively team up together with the effects of his skill. This hidden ability might be a game changer for our boy, who quickly remembers that it's a mechanic of the game that abilities evolve based on different route selections. The skill expansion allows command over surrounding party members. Upon issuing a command on his turn, Yahello will act exactly like he says during his turn. Of course, bro's never gonna force her to do unhinged crazy shit like do 300 backflips and then T-pose on their enemies. All he has to do is issue a simple command based on simple actions, like shooting the spider. If that is the case, then it'll probably cost him 1 action point per turn. The biggest hurdle he faces with the dwarf's party is that they refuse to listen to him on time. But if he can gain complete obedience over Yahello and instruct like a video game character, he'll have unlocked a brilliant opportunity. So, despite the tempting offer made by the dwarf, our boy is busy contemplating his choices. He initiates the hourglass sequence, allowing him a 60-second window to think things through and make the best choice. The biggest risk is how things will turn out for their future, which is why he has to be careful. If he chooses the hourglass route, then Yahello and him will become unstoppable. But if he escapes the dungeon with the party, he fulfills his goal of freeing himself from slavery and earning a proper livelihood. The turn ends as our boy reaches his conclusion. First, he grabs the cute elf's hand, and then he makes it clear that despite the generous offer, he wants to travel alongside Yahello. That's why he's okay with all 3 of them passing through the exit gate. Hearing him make the ultimate sacrifice for her sake stuns the elf and baffles the dwarf's party. The mage emphasizes that he's serious on his decision to stay, and internalizes that he would have made the same choice in the sequence of the game. Right now, nurturing Yahello to perfection is going to help him in the long run, and besides that, bro genuinely can't leave her behind on this hellish floor. She tries to talk sense into him, but our boy's already made up his mind. He doesn't bother explaining why, and thinks that if he keeps Yahello to himself, he'll protect his conscience from feeling guilty in the long run. Among the dwarf's group, the beastman steps up, once again looking scary and all. But hilariously, just like last time, bro melts down in tears after seeing Calum make such a noble sacrifice. Both the cleric and the dwarf are envious of Calum and genuinely regret that a man like him isn't in their party. Emma chimes in and brings up the elephant in the room. If Calum and Yahello are staying behind, they've got to formulate a plan to beat the next boss all on their own. To that, the mage requests keeping the venomic spider's corpse. But of course, the angry dwarf isn't so kind as to let them have it for free. So instead, Calum proceeds to purchase the spider at the price of 1,500 from the original amount he was promised. Before leaving, Vertinen asks about the elf's name. Bro tries to guess it and gets it wrong by a long shot. Yahello has to correct his ass, but he keeps on teasing her with the nickname Pretty Lady, showing off his support for her valiant contributions. Anyway, the dwarf really hopes for them to return alive, and as a final gesture of friendship, he offers 4 potions to help them along the journey. The elf thanks them, and they all hope to share a drink together sometime. The cleric even tells them about her temple's address, as she'll have their reward ready once they emerge from the exit gate. The priestess then offers a final prayer, blessing them with a stat boost for the next 2 hours. The blessings also save you from any effects of curses and decaying. With that, the adventurer trio bids farewell to our heroes. Zikal and Emma are the first to say goodbye, while Vertinen is the last. Holding an E-rank mana stone in his hand, he shoves it inside the gate, changing its color to red. He instructs them to find him at the Adventurers Guild after escaping the hellhole. Reminding them of his name, he expects their eventual return. The gate closes, leaving the elf regretting Calem's decision to stay behind, especially when it's going to be difficult looking for another exit gate. Of course, it's something that our boy knew when he took up the risk. At this point, he's become so immersed with the nature of the game that his calculations at every level have become advanced. He assures the elf that they'll work together to escape the mess, but first, they have to steal that precious spider fang. The system issues a notification regarding Yurnal's trust reaching pure fulfillment at 100%, allowing our boy to issue any commands to her during his turn. A little while passes, and while she's working her way through the spider's fangs, Yurnal expresses that she's okay with him asking anything of her. She doesn't even mind if he sacrifices her as a shield. At the same time, it bothers her that she's the only one busy extracting the fang. To that, the mage emphasizes that he's making her do this for a reason. Right now, her only goal should be to pull the fang. Yurnal obeys his command, while our boy reflects on the real reason he's not helping out. You see, there's an item extraction success rate, and it correlates to one's dexterity stat. Among the two of them, the elf has more points in dexterity, so her success rate is way higher. The second reason he's doing this is to test her loyalty because of the skill expansion system. He has to issue commands so that she can be better prepared for their future battles. There's the issue that difficult commands are also going to be difficult to execute. For example, Yurnal can't just go ahead and kick the dwarf because it goes against her nature. In the same way, she can't become a damn tornado and shoot out arrows like she's an unstoppable force of nature. From the looks of it, our boy already understands what commands will fail. That's why he wants to prepare simple commands for her to follow. Calem intends to test the skill expansion thoroughly. Anyway, the elf is all done collecting the fang, which means it's time for them to move on to their next destination. With the fangs collected, he'll help her make poisonous arrows. While the elf is dancing in celebrations, Calem is genuinely happy for her. The same girl who couldn't stop crying a minute ago is so different now. It's true that death looms over their head the longer they stay here, but at the very least, he is happy to see his friend smile. In the next scene, they're already discussing strategies to combine the goblin's arrow with the poisonous fang to make an even more lethal weapon. Of course, he hands the task completely to Yurnal to deal with on her own. Though she's happy to make the arrows, Yurnal struggles to see if they'll be helpful or battle or not. To that, our boy reveals the real reason she hasn't been able to deal extraordinary damage. It's simply because of her failing gear, and an archer's equipment is paramount to their skill. Later down the line, they can upgrade the bow, but for now, arrows can be utilized to make poisonous weapons. The poison arrow is a combination of 2 items, and because of that, the archer is able to unleash insane amounts of damage from it. Once again, he leaves the task to her, and reflects that her dexterity skills should come into effect. Before he can even finish the thought, it turns out that Yurnal's already done crafting the poisonous arrow. Calem can't believe that she did it so fast. But to her, it's simple enough to understand that she only needed to stick out the pointy bit of the fang on her arrow. But that's only simple in theory, because in reality, even the slightest disparity in force control could result in one's own death. The poisonous arrow is responsible for casting physical and poisonous damage, exhibiting a gas to affect creatures nearby. However, since they're limited in capacity, Calem plans to use them only when they need it the most. Their travels continue as he thinks about testing the new feature of his hourglass extension. He activates the turn system and commands Yurnal a simple action to take water out of his bag and hand it to him. To his surprise, the energy bar remains unaffected, but it's mostly because he's not issuing something even more direct. When the turn ends, surprisingly, she carries out the command anyway and hands him the bottle. From this observation, Calem realizes that the system rewrites her memories according to the situation at hand, which makes him eager to test how it will play out in actual combat scenarios. The mage notices his chance when a monster appears nearby. He activates the hourglass system and invokes the fireball to target the goblins. Then he commands Yurnal to shoot the other goblin's leg. When the turn ends, her arrow is released and it specifically targets the second goblin's leg, causing it to screech in pain. To finish the goblin off, our boy uses a fireball spell point blank to send it to hell. He then quizzes her on why she shot the creature's leg instead of its head. Just like last time, the system justifies her actions as she tells him that the leg is an easier target. Now this puts one thing into perspective. Yurnal will carry out any order he says during his turn. It's really good for our boy because he can control her in situations where he can't do much. Well, there's also the part about certain commands having a difficulty tolerance with Yurnal, and our boy is curious to see how that will work. So, activating the hourglass system again, he demands her to do a specific dance. When the turn ends, all she's doing is looking at him confused. Basically nothing happened because the command didn't make sense. Instead, when he activates it again to issue the simple command of doing any dance, Yahello ends up tapping her feet and enjoying herself in front of him. But reality hits him as much as it hits her. Girl feels incredibly embarrassed for it, while our boy is disappointed with the way certain commands work. Anyway, he tags her along and they continue their long walk. Again, Calem feels interested in testing her knowledge and activates the turn system one more time. This time, he orders her to tell him about his past before they enter the labyrinth. When the turn ends, she starts off talking about the rumors of why Calem became a slave in the first place. Our boy is drinking water until he spits out his drink when he hears that his character committed murder, and that's why he's stuck here. At first, she was really afraid of him, but eventually realized that he's a nice guy. She even justifies it by saying that he must have had his reasons for killing someone, which is crazy even in his eyes. The elf expresses that he is responsible for killing a fox beast woman who was once his teammate. Interestingly enough, the foxkin in the game are known for being incredible and well-rounded in every way. They're also known to entice people by their looks. But for some reason, this elf is incredibly glad that the woman is dead, because she thinks Calem would never kill someone for his own whims. Her scary-ass reaction is starting to creep out our boy, who wonders what's gotten into her. They keep on walking as she talks about his past as an adventurer. Now, the Magic University is known for putting one person in the labyrinth who is skilled enough to lead the other slaves. That's why he was placed among her group. Still, the fact that Calem's past is riddled with mystery has our boy concerned about a bunch of things. But before he can focus on that, Lady Luck blesses both of them with a chance to face off another exit room. That's right. Not even our boy thought that he'd be going up against another one of these so early. But it's a good thing they're here. The elf even discovers someone's unconscious body. It's actually Abison, the mage of the adventurer party. It appears that his soul is being preserved with magic, so it makes it seem like he's fast asleep. His fair complexion suggests that he belongs to a noble family, because Calem points out that normal slaves can only dream of experiencing a soul preservation service. Anyway, this is good news, because if they can recover his body back to his family, they'll get a hefty reward for it. Aside from his preserved state, it appears that Abison's leg is missing, implying that something must have chopped it off. Calem asks her to use her sound mapping technique to detect sounds nearby. The poor elf is terrified to confirm that there is an unpleasant sound, but she doesn't hear the sound of wings flapping about. This is a strange revelation, because clearly Vertinen told them that the Black Hornet was responsible for Abison's demise. The creature wouldn't really leave its prey running about, which makes Calem curious about the boss's nature. He thinks it's a good idea to navigate to the source of the sound, even though they don't have any proper leads to go off of. Circling around the area, our boy discovers a Black Hornet larva. The reason they couldn't hear the sound of wings is because this little dipshit became responsible for chewing off Abison's leg. What's even stranger is that the hornet is nowhere to be found. Even if the adventurers came to defeat it, there would be proof. And then the larva is here intact like nothing happened. The only logical explanation is that the Black Hornet must have faced off against an even more terrifying creature, as there's no way the boss monster of a first floor would run away without reason. The realization suddenly hits him as Calem's fears come to light. He quickly asks about any missing reports of adventurers on the first floor. While the elf is clueless, she shares the rumors of someone called Mr. Backattack going missing. And yes, that is a real name. I'm not even joking. Yahello elaborates that Mr. Backattack is known for defeating a Black Hornet all on his own, even when his party was exterminated. The elf doesn't get why he's asking such a sudden question like that. While the mage connects the dots and understands what's going on, he's dealing with a rogue fighter, someone who is a direct counter to a mage. Seeing his riddled expression, Yahello pushes him to explain what's going on. Finally, he tells her about what it means to become a possessed adventurer. At first, the elf has no clue, but it's normal for her to think like that as possessed adventurers are uncommon. Despite having cleared multiple rounds in the game, Calem has only had one specific encounter with a possessed adventurer. It's a state of complete madness, where one's soul is devoured by the Labyrinth Master, driving them to act on his will. These rogue adventurers are channeled by the effect of madness, adding to their terror. Using the same abilities and magic from their adventurer past, they become unimaginably cunning and difficult to deal with. There's a reason why our duo was able to discover the exit room so quickly, and it wasn't just luck. Yahello is at the verge of tears and thinks that all hope is lost, while our boy quickly gathers himself and understands that he's stomping on her morale by losing his own composure. He assures the elf that they'll make the best out of this situation, despite how difficult it may be. After all, she's got him by his side. The scene cuts to the angry dwarf who is rattling his mouth off against the bar owner. No matter how much he tries to convince him about the spectacular multicasting mage, the owner doesn't believe him one bit, as that kind of talent is generational and isn't easy to find. The dwarf has given up on proving his case, while his friend is glad that he just made it back out alive. To make him happy, the guy whips him up a toast for free, at the same time mocking him for his story of the magician who doesn't chant his spells. Despite being angry, Vertanen devours the drink whole. The bar owner is curious about Zikal and learns that the Beastman is still lacking experience in labyrinth hunts. Apparently, he's the guy who introduced the two to each other, and he has high expectations of the Beastman to live up to the name of Mr. Backattack. The dwarf lets out a hearty laugh, sharing how the rogue is just a legend among the first floors and shouldn't be compared. He's intrigued by the idea of a labyrinth master, but doesn't know much about it. Vertanen's party crashes when the door kicks open. Abyssin's mother has been looking left and right for the dwarf for an update on her precious baby boy. She's horrified to learn about his death, which Vertanen confirms on his behalf. Abyssin died in a Black Hornet's rampage, and the news rips the boy's mother to shreds. She's out here barely holding her own together, but still has hope because of the soul preservation magic. The boy's older brother is cold as hell and reminds the dwarf that it would be unwise to let his brother's death go unattended like that. An important member of House Burton has fallen, so he's expecting Vertanen to execute a rescue operation soon. The dwarf reveals that the preservation spell should maintain his soul for a week, allowing them to revive him in a timely manner. But the scroll's preparation will take at least 3 days, and only after that will they depart for the journey. The older brother wonders if they can find the kid right away, and learns that Vertanen has a tracking spell on him to look for lost items. Thanks to the ID card they received from Calum, it's possible to look for him without any problems. He even talks highly of this genius mage, causing the bar owner to jump in to tease and ridicule the dwarf again. After learning about the almighty mage with ultra-fast casting and 0 incantations, even the older brother thinks they're messing around with bad comedy. However, his mother argues that maybe the mage will be able to find her son's body. The dwarf thinks it's likely as well. But of course, Clarence doesn't think a mere party of 2 slaves is ever going to make it past the exit gate and dismisses the possibility. In any case, his mother is impatient and wants an immediate retrieval of Abyssin's body, so much so that she's willing to name a reward on it. Hearing about the reward, another beastman expresses interest in recovering the body for them. But before he can finish his sentence, Walmart Gojo Satoru is there to shut his mouth. Bro scares him so bad that he runs out of the bar without saying another word. Clarence is a bit concerned with his mother's usage of money to solve every problem. That's why he offers to find the body himself, pairing himself alongside Vertanen, who thinks it's an excellent idea to take a 5th-floor mage to tag along with them. Clarence agrees, stating that it's his responsibility as the older brother. Secondarily, he's interested in meeting this so-called genius mage that the dwarf loves to gloat about. And now let's revert back to the main setting, where Calum is discussing the current problem with their plan. If they wait for the dwarf's party to arrive, the larva will starve to death. And the moment it goes, its death will attract other more dangerous monsters to the same level. That's why they can't stay here for long and have to leave. The elf suggests waiting in the next exit room, but that's also an unwise strategy if they're dealing with a rogue legend like Mr. Backattack. For now, their only chance of survival is to deal with Backattack on their own, and though it's not a surefire chance of success, they still have the means to pull it off. A discouraged Urinal asks if they truly have a chance. To that, our boy confirms that they can use one way to get rid of him. Urinal fires up with emotion. She is willing to go to any lengths for his plan. It's a good thing, because our boy plans on cooking up a sinister strategy to deal with such a dangerous foe. In the next scene, these two are hunting down monsters like sport. The mage expresses that they'll officially begin their training arc by killing 100 goblins in the same manner. Urinal doesn't get him, but once he starts moving and unleashing multiple spells to kill numerous goblins, she follows up by using her arrows to help cover him from behind. Calum understands that the 5th level is the highest for floor 1, and they've already reached level 4 after taking out that giant-ass spider. That means if they can train for a couple of more days, they'll end up leveling up again and have the best shot of success against the rogue adventurer. The reason level 5 is so important is because of its reward to grant a special ability. Killing the monsters will earn them valuable magic stones. They'll keep the best ones and toss out all the others. With hundreds of goblins eliminated, our boy issues their next task. They'll be hunting goblin shamans so they can find the most useful scrolls. He goes on up ahead, leaving Urinal catching up from behind. The part where they killed the shamans is off-screen, but the duo's finally training. They haven't eaten properly for days, and the elf is at the verge of a mental breakdown. The larva is definitely going to die tomorrow, so it's only getting more difficult for them to survive from here on out. The elf has lost her mind to the point she recommends feeding the almost dead larva to Abyssin's preserved state. However, the mage highlights the problems that come with damaging a preserved corpse. He's currently fixated on filling up the orc barrel with magic stones and water as part of his plan. The excited elf wants to suggest switching shifts for the night, but the poor girl gets destroyed when our boy heads off to sleep first. This time she's not willing to back down. Urinal shows the scariest side of her yet, so terrifying that our boy is quivering in his bed. Unfortunately, he has to sleep first to sort out their stats every night. To make her happy, he promises to watch an extra 30 minutes during his shift. It's enough to make her heart flutter and help calm her down. Admitting that she's got a scary side, Calum focuses on entering his rest state. At long last, both of them experience a collective level up to level 5, allowing them access to a new special ability. From now on, Calum decides to enter the exit room. However, Urnil lets him know that she doesn't exactly doubt him or anything. But this worrywart still asks if Calum is seriously planning to face the boss looking like that. Calum straight up tells this blondie not to stress about it, since what she sees isn't the whole picture. He makes it clear that the one thing that won't change is the fact that they're going to defeat the boss. Though Blondie didn't mean it like that at all. She clears it up by saying she's just wondering if wearing that stuff would actually help in there. Even so, she can't stand the stinky load Calum's carrying. The dude claims that the Black Hobbit's egg is insanely tough. Once they step into the exit room, they spot a possessed adventurer sitting on the throne, and Calum's all set to take him head on. That redhead freak lets out a creepy laugh, seeing them bold enough to show up. Right then, the freak whips out his blade, ready to charge. A window pops up, alerting Calum that it's his turn. The lad didn't catch much, but seeing the hourglass activate right away, he figures the enemy must have used the skill Leaping Ambush and is already behind his back. He knows the freak is behind him, since he pretty much expected the rogue's playstyle and aimed ahead of time. First, after landing a 4-shot lightning shock, Calum points his wand at the redhead. In the middle of the attack, Calum shouts to Urnil that as soon as he electrocutes this freak, she needs to douse him with water. Action points are fully consumed, ending the turn. The hourglass flips again, and the cooldown is 60 seconds. With that, Calum electrocutes the freak, pushing him back, but the red boss tanks through all of it. Right then, Urnil moves to the boss's side and throws water at him. As soon as it's done, Calum calls out that the guy's in a soaked state, back attack. He immediately casts Ice Pick, but the redhead dodges like a pro. Calum figures the guy just used Shadow Leap. However, he notices that the boss has already burned through all his movement skills. So before the cooldown resets, Calum hatches a plan. He tells Urnil to lift the oak barrel and burst it with an arrow. Thus, Calum raises the barrel of water, Urnil lines up her shot, and fires. Then, the barrel bursts mid-air, and Calum fires Ice Pick straight into the water, freezing the floor. This ticks off the redhead, as Calum notices the entire floor is now covered in ice, so he dares the guy to make his next move. Calum guesses it'll either be careful footwork or a wall walk skill, but something suddenly clicks in his mind. The redhead's attack is aimed straight at Calum's gut, and the egg shield shatters at that very moment. Blondie rushes to check on him, and Calum quietly thanks the eggshells for saving him from a serious injury. Still, he can't believe this freak is using a magic throw from that close. Luckily, the destructive power's weaker from such a distance, but Calum's barely hanging in there. Meanwhile, the redhead freak looks ready to crank things up a notch. Calum figures this possessed adventurer's about to go invisible next. He quickly orders Urnil to pinpoint the back attack position. Within seconds, Urnil seems to have located it, and her arrow shoots out, nearly grazing the red freak's head. However, this freak deflects the attack in a flash and lunges mid-air to strike. He grabs his hammer, and Calum spots a grenade hanging from his belt, which immediately tenses him up. He knows the hourglass cooldown is still a long way off, but the turn-based hourglass cooldown only has 15 seconds left. Still, the dude doesn't care. He's been waiting for this exact moment. Calum points his sword at the Black Hornet's larva and casts Ice Pick right at it. The bug lets out a shriek at the sudden attack, and Calum finishes it off. Right then and there, he levels up, all for this one moment. His special ability, Slaughter's Momentum, kicks in as Calum takes aim and reactivates the hourglass. His turn starts again with 60 seconds on the clock. In-game, it's an ability that recovers 2 action points upon killing an enemy. After taking out the Black Hornet, Calum gets a Pulse 2 kill bonus, but now the activation condition has shifted. Slaughter's Momentum not only grants action points, but also doubles up. After killing an enemy, Calum can acquire a temporary 2-point hourglass that lasts for 60 seconds. This has to be activated manually and can only be used once per battle. This dude figures that pulling this off meant sharing his food bit by bit and dragging the larvae all the way here. But now, his focus is locked on the real target, the bomb, which is no bigger than a ping pong ball, sitting 10 meters away. Even so, Calum knows he has to hit it, no matter what. He raises his wand again, silently begging for it to work just this once. Then, he casts Lightning Shock. With all his action points spent, his turn comes to an end. Calum electrocutes the possessed adventurer mid-air as the freak lunges at him. The freak blocks it with his hammer, triggering a chain reaction. Calum can't believe he actually pulled it off, just like back when he was a special class marksman in the army. The dude quickly asks Urnil for the freak's position, and she points it out for him. Calum fires off an Ice Pick in that direction, and it lands straight on the freak's chest, knocking him back. The freeze status hits perfectly, meaning there's no way the freak can dodge now. Without wasting a second, Calum orders Urnil to fire an arrow, and she does exactly that. Right then, the freak takes the arrow straight to the chest. No matter the level difference, in the end, Calum figures the freak's poison sac is torn, so he'll die just from breathing. Calum knows exactly how this will go if the plan stays on track. Now that he's exposed to the gas, he'll take 20 damage per second for 20 seconds. Even if this guy can't see a health points bar like in a game, this fight should be over in just a few seconds. So Calum tells him not to struggle and just let it end. But suddenly, a bright glow bursts from the freak's corner, shattering Calum's hopes. He never counted on a last-minute fluke. Right away, he tells Yurnal to get ready for Plan B, and the worrywart instantly goes on alert. Calum didn't want things to turn out like this, but he knows the truth. The most dangerous thing about possessed adventurers in the labyrinth is that they can still use the special abilities they had back when they were real adventurers. Fortunately, Calum expected as much. The good thing is, he already had Plan B lined up just in case things went south. Back then, sitting by the fire, Calum shared the plan with Yurnal. He suggested firing just one poison arrow first to see how the enemy reacts. Yurnal questioned whether using both arrows at once might give them a better shot at winning. At that point, Calum was already suspicious that this boss supposedly took down a Black Hornet solo, which didn't sit right with him. It made him wonder if Back Attack had a way to cleanse poison. Even if he's a skilled and agile thief, going head-to-head with a Black Hornet should have been way tougher than that. Calum believes that making it through a fight with a Black Hornet without getting grazed by its poison stinger even once is basically impossible. He noticed that Back Attack did get poisoned but somehow dodged death, which makes sense now. Calum turns to Yurnal, wanting her to take on it. She asks if he's saying Back Attack can cure poison. Calum shakes his head. Since Back Attack's a thief, there's no way he'd use magic. Based on his guess, if it's not bombs, potions, or scrolls, then the only thing left is a special ability. That's why Calum is sure their top priority should be confirming whether or not he's got a detox method. That's when the worrywart catches on that if Back Attack can detox fast, they're in serious trouble. But the hero, smug as ever, assures her that it's not going to play out like that. He still has Plan B ready. Back in the present, Back Attack is about to go on a full-blown rampage. With his special ability, Adrenaline Rush, kicking in, which recovers 50 health points, resets the cooldown of one first-tier skill, and wipes out all negative status effects. This freak can feel the surge in his chest as the ability activates. He instantly uses cautious steps and charges straight at Calum. The sight horrifies the boy. He knows the hourglass cooldown still has 3 seconds left. Blondie panics, bow drawn and ready to shoot, but she asks Calum if it's time. He stops her, saying it's not yet. He figures that since Back Attack just activated a movement skill, he'd dodge the shot anyway. For Plan B to work, Calum knows he needs to create some distance from Yurnal first. With that, he jumps ahead, sliding down while firing off Lightning Shock at Back Attack. The freak dodges it effortlessly and quickly closes the gap, grabbing Calum's hand. At that moment, Calum loses his grip on the wand, a sinking realization washing over him. His fate might be sealed. Back Attack pins him down, blade in hand, ready to end it. Calum, in mid-choke, locks eyes with Yurnal and gives her a subtle signal. Blondie picks up on it instantly as she gets into position, ready to let her shot fly. Just as she steadies herself, Back Attack drives his blade into Calum's gut. Calum forces out the words Plan B. Yurnal screams his name, panic flooding her voice, while Calum feels the stab wound burning through him like fire. That's when Calum pulls out the potion he got from Vertinen Party. The guy's barely hanging on, clutching the bottle with shaking hands. But right then, Back Attack spots the move and copies it, pulling out his own potion. This freaks out Calum, realizing that even now, this thief jerk's copycat habit hasn't changed. Just then, a window pops up showing that it's Calum's turn. That smug look returns to his face. He quietly thanks the idiot for falling for the bluff and moving exactly as planned in Plan B. Besides, Calum decides to ride this out on pure potion power, so he tells the guy to give it his best shot, letting him know that the dagger won't be the thing that takes him out. With that, he chugs the whole thing down. That's when he gives the order to Yurnal to shoot, as it's time for this persistent jerk to say his goodbyes. With that, a new window pops up, saying his turn has ended as the hourglass flips again. The potion still dangles from Calum's mouth when the blade strikes his chest once more, but something's off this time. Calum suddenly gets a firm grip on Back Attack's neck. Turns out it's magic armor. He's betting this thief jerk didn't know about that one. The magic armor scroll blocks up to 5 physical attacks as long as each hit deals 100 damage or less. Calum's got the guy locked down and commands Yurnal to finish the job. That's when Blondie fires an arrow straight into Back Attack's gut, and Calum, with that smug look, asks how it feels to get hit by a poison arrow twice. Then he declares that the real battle starts now. In the middle of all this chaos, Yurnal cries out, worried sick, asking if Calum's okay. Meanwhile, the freak is losing it, and Calum feels like his lungs are getting shredded. Desperate to survive, he gulps down every last potion he's got. Then, this thief jerk suddenly grabs Calum by the shoulders, making him wonder if the guy somehow still has strength left in him. His eyes widen in fear when he sees Bakatak raising the dagger, ready to stab again. But right then, the blade slips from the freak's hand, and Bakatak himself slips out of Kalem's grip, collapsing to the ground. Kalem is left in shock, realizing this stubborn prick finally dropped dead. In that same moment, Kalem loses his own grip on consciousness. Blondie rushes over, desperate to make sure he's not dead. And this weirdo, half-conscious and barely breathing, is still mumbling for more potion. This crybaby forces more potion into Kalem's mouth, telling him they've won, so now they have to make it through the gate together. Still, Kalem groans that it hurts like hell, even with the potion. He figures the calculations must be off, because even after drinking all of them, the poison might still kill him. That thought breaks Blondie, and she bursts into tears, unable to watch him die. With no other choice, she keeps making him drink every last potion they've got. Afterward, Kalem barely manages to stand, finally believing he might survive this. He takes a moment to praise Yurnal for landing that final arrow right on time and nailing the shot. But this crybaby confesses that the terrain blocked her view, and she was super stressed about whether it would actually hit or not. Kalem gives her a soft smile, knowing full well that ranged attacks always suffer penalties when firing from lower ground. Since Bakatak used Shadow Leap, Kalem had already predicted he'd do that, which is exactly why he chose Artillery Strike as Yurnal's level 5 special ability. That skill ignores all obstacles once the target's position is marked. He trusted Blondie to make the shot, as she cried like a baby. Her tears remind Kalem there's still unfinished business before they leave, as the exit gate still has 2 spots left. With that in mind, the lad decides to take Bakatak and Avison with them. At the tavern, Vertinen asks what business he has coming in at this hour, especially since he doesn't even drink. He figures Clarence must be here about the resurrection scroll. The man replies that his little brother's life is at stake, so he has to confirm everything with his own eyes. Vertinen reassures him that the scroll will be ready by today, and he'll be granted access to the dungeon around 5 in the morning. But he also warns him, the soul preservation magic doesn't have much time left. If the rescue fails, even another scroll won't make resurrection possible. That's why he needs to cut out every single risk and make sure this plan goes off without a hitch. Out of nowhere, a woman bursts through the door, slamming it open as she announces that she's brought the resurrection scroll. She also declares there's no time to waste, and they need to head straight to the dungeon office, because the exit gate on the first floor has just opened. That news stuns both Vertinen and the Zakal, while Clarence Man quickly asks her to confirm if it's really the first floor's gate. She nods and rushes off to the next street to spread the word. Vertinen decides to check it out immediately. Meanwhile, the Zakal cracks a joke, saying he heard rumors about dwarven money being snatched again, but wonders if it's a rookie this time. At the Dungeon Union's underground control room, right beside the exit gate, there's a girl crying her eyes out. No one's come out yet, and it feels like forever. She can't believe she's stuck in this situation all because of some ridiculous rumor. Suddenly, the nerdo senses movement. Someone's coming out. Behind her, a whole crowd has gathered, all demanding to know if the gate has really opened. Clarence greets the instructor, and she nods, already aware of the news. She figures Clarence showed up to see if Avison made it out, and he confirms with a nod, though he clearly isn't getting his hopes up. Just then, something starts emerging from the gate. The instructor offers some words of comfort, saying she hopes things work out for Clarence, and tells him not to worry too much about his little brother. Still, she insists on checking who's coming out first. That's when a zombie-like face starts to appear through the portal. The moment the instructor sees it, she completely loses her mind, screaming in horror and wondering what's up with that rotten-looking face. Suddenly, someone hurls Avison out of the portal like a piece of trash. Vertinen, the informant, and Zakal are all stunned to see him, while Clarence rushes over to his side. Just as the shock settles, the portal glows golden again, and out comes another body, thrown just as carelessly. The woman instantly recognizes him. That thief jerk, it's none other than Mr. Bakatak. The instructor is straight up freaking out, wondering if the portal's just spitting out corpses now. Half the people coming out don't even look alive, and she's got no clue what's going on anymore. Clarence holds his little brother in his arms, trying to piece things together, wondering if it's a 2-person party that managed to defeat Bakatak. If that's the case, then one of them must be a no-chant ultra-fast caster. He remembers the bartender talking about a slave mage who could cast without chanting. Vertinen is staring in disbelief, trying to process it all. He swears he saw something, but decides to let the others believe what they want for now. Deep down, though, he's starting to wonder if it might actually be true. He calls out for Kalem, but it's not him who steps out. It's Blondie, who introduces herself as Yurnal. She apologizes for the confusion and reassures everyone that Kalem will be out soon enough. Relief washes over the crowd. Vertinen and the others are overjoyed to see that Yurnal made it back alive. With a bit of a grin, Vertinen says he always had faith in that guy. He knew they'd pull it off safely, and the trio couldn't be happier. Blondie adds that Kalem did most of the work anyway. That's when the instructor suddenly recognizes Yurnal as part of the slave team from the Magic Academy. Even for a skilled duo, she admits that defeating Back Attack is a huge deal. It has the potential to become headline news, but the fact that it was done by a two-person cheap slave party with basic gear just blows her mind. And when she hears they only formed the party a few days ago, it almost makes her want to throw up from shock. Then the portal flickers again, and Yahello figures it's time for Calum to make his return. Still, the instructor can't wrap her head around how they pulled it off. Just then, Calum's hand reaches through the portal, and Yahello lights up with excitement. He walks out of the exit gate, and Z calls in disbelief that these two actually brought down Back Attack. The lady is thrilled to see that they managed to bring Avicen's body back too. Vertinen steps forward, asking if either of them is hurt, but Calum just looks around the room, thinking it's way too loud in here. Calum can barely stand, mumbling something to the priest about 8,000 gold, barely able to form words. Yahello starts freaking out, panicking as she screams, wondering what's happening to him now. Later, at the Temple of Nathaniel, Calum opens his eyes and asks the priestess what happened. She tells him he passed out the moment he stepped out of the portal. Apparently, he collapsed from a drug overdose after chugging way too many healing potions. Calum tries to explain himself, saying it was the only way he could survive. Aside from that, he's more concerned about the payment. She rolls her eyes and tells this dumbhead it's on the desk and asks if he wants to check. Calum takes a look and sees it's only 7,850 gold. He's short by 150. That's when the priestess casually mentions it's the treatment fee, and Calum grumbles that he never asked to be treated. She lets out a nervous laugh and says Yahello authorized it, which instantly ticks him off. After that, she asks if he plans to head to the Magic Academy next to claim his free citizen status. But Calum doesn't respond. Instead, he shifts the topic and asks what happened with Avicen and Back Attack. That jogs her memory that Avicen is currently in the resurrection chamber, and the revival process will start soon. As for Back Attack's body, she says it was sent to the morgue. When Calum asks if the corpse had soul preservation magic, she confirms it didn't, so resurrection isn't possible. Soul preservation is a spell that binds the soul to the body for 1 week, and if the body is recovered within that time, revival can happen. Still, Calum thinks that in Back Attack's case, there might be a loophole, as if the dungeon master extracted his soul and sealed it in a jar like pickled kimchi, and someone retrieved it from the Sanctuary of Souls, then revival might still be on the table. Calum figures they don't even know the sanctuary exists, which is why they're saying revival is impossible. He himself only discovered it while playing on the God of Strategy difficulty level. After that, he says his goodbyes to the priestess and heads out toward the Magic Academy. On the way, he catches up with Yahello, who asks if he's feeling any better. He flashes the money they earned, saying they'll use it to finally free themselves from the slave label. That makes Yahello light up with excitement. Later, after doing the calculations, it turns out Yahello can't be freed from her slave status just yet. Calum's sure they've got enough gold to make it happen. Turns out, the cost to become a free citizen is 3,000 gold. Based on contribution points, Yahello's share only adds up to 2 gold, so she's not eligible for citizenship yet. Calum steps up to argue on Yahello's behalf, questioning the standard used to calculate and distribute the rewards. The finance guy doesn't look thrilled to be dragged into a discussion and resorts to a visual explanation to get his point across. He shows what he calls the Scales of Fairness, a magical tool that apparently weighs what each person has contributed to the adventure. Based on the testimony given by Vertinen's party, the scales have already decided how things should be split. Calum gets curious, since this is the first time he's seen such magic in action. But that doesn't stop him from arguing. He insists Yahello's share is way too low, especially since she personally crafted the weapon that brought down the possessed Mr. Back Attack. The finance guy asks if any of that was included in the contract Calum signed with the party, and Calum quickly nods. He explains the plan had always been to get a poison arrow and clear the next room, and if Yahello didn't have the dexterity to make that, he wouldn't have proposed that contract in the first place. The poor girl stands there shaking and crying as she watches Calum fight for her. Thankfully, the Scales of Fairness catch all of it. But just when the full calculation for the adventure is about to begin, the finance guy, now looking even more bored than before, drops one more surprise. This time it's some lie prevention magic, as if the situation wasn't already messy enough. He casts the magic on both teammates, telling them their tongues will go numb if they lie, and that he has to use this trick whenever he's evaluating the contribution of a slave team. The guy, who honestly looks like he's got better things to do than listen to dungeon stories, tells them to drop their bags on the table and give a truthful rundown of what they actually did during their trip through the dungeon. As the testimony kicks off, Calum quietly hopes that Yahello finally gets out of slavery this time. But once it all wraps up, the finance guy announces that the total from selling the magic stones they brought back adds up to over 14,000, which is about what a regular 4-person team pulls from the first floor of the labyrinth. Sadly, Yahello's share turns out to be just 20%, which means she's still 75 gold short of the amount she needs to buy her freedom. This revelation clearly rattles our guy while Urinal just keeps crying beside him. The finance guy looks like he could pass out from sleep deprivation any second now, but still makes an effort to comfort the elf girl by explaining that the average income for a slave in the labyrinth hovers around 500, with a survival rate of less than 10%. And if she just does the basic maths, she's already earned more than what most get in 5 separate dungeon runs. Then comes the harsh part. The same guy breaks it down without sugarcoating anything, saying the only reason she made it out alive with that much money is because of Calum, since all she really did was follow his strategy. Just to crush her spirit a little more, he points out that she only fired 2 pathetic arrows the whole time. Still, he offers her a chance to speak up if she has any issues with the final distribution. To everyone's surprise, the girl accepts the result without hesitation, while Calum just stands there like a statue, unable to do a single thing. The finance guy, cold as ever, blocks any attempt Calum might make to help her, reminding him that sending criminal slaves to the labyrinth is meant to be a punishment. Then he turns to Calum and asks if he wants to spend his gold to buy his own freedom. And even though Calum doesn't want to go through with it, he ends up taking the offer and finally breaks free. Once the finance guy wraps up the evaluation, he orders Yurnil to be taken away to the slave quarters, casually mentioning that she might sell for a good price at the Adventurers Guild thanks to her bow skills. The poor girl cries out Calum's name while being dragged off to the slave chamber, and Calum just stands there, quietly thinking that he'll come looking for her later. Before he can walk away, the boring guy suddenly pipes up and asks if Calum plans to enroll in the Magic University, saying they wouldn't want to lose a powerful mage like him, especially one with a talent for high-speed, no-chant casting. He even stretches his hand out, promising full support from the academy in all areas. Watching this guy's attitude take a complete 180, Calum figures it's probably because he now sees him as a free man. He starts thinking about how many mages must have died during the labyrinth's eruption, which explains why the academy is suddenly clinging to someone like him. So Calum decides to play along with the guy and casually asks what kind of perks he'd get if he signed up. Just as Jacob's about to make his offer sound more tempting and convincing, Professor Malini steps in from behind, asking if this is the guy they've been hearing rumors about. The old geezer claims he came in person just to confirm whether someone with such rare abilities actually exists. Calum politely introduces himself, trying to score some PR points, and Malini seems to like the fire in his eyes. But instead of continuing the chat about admissions, the professor says this isn't the time for that and throws a question at him, asking what he thinks is the most important mission of a mage. Calum takes a guess and asks if it's about developing new magic or wiping out labyrinth monsters, but the old man cuts him off right there. Malini says the real mission is to eliminate otherworld possessors. That one line alone sends a chill down Calum's spine, and he suddenly gets the feeling that if this old man ever finds out he's from another world, he might not even get the chance to explain before he's hanging from a rope. The old geezer keeps going, explaining how the labyrinth's eruption has caused an insane amount of destruction, and now it falls on the mages to step in and deal with the aftermath while figuring out how to stop it from happening again. From what they've managed to investigate so far, it seems the main cause behind these eruptions is the growing number of possessors who have crossed over into this world. He adds that when these people avoid entering the labyrinth for more than 2 weeks, the labyrinth itself reacts by erupting in an attempt to wipe them out completely. Malini admits he still doesn't fully understand why things are set up this way, or who exactly is behind it, but he makes it clear that taking out these isekai individuals has become necessary if they want to keep the world in one piece. Hearing all of this makes our guy more than a little nervous, as it starts sinking in, that even after finally earning his freedom, life still has no intention of letting him relax, and peace clearly isn't part of the deal. The old geezer finally gets to the point and says that from what he has heard, Calum used to be a labyrinth adventurer from the far western city of Windurm, and ended up as a slave after being charged with the murder of a fellow colleague, someone he claimed had been possessed by an otherworld possessor. Calum stands there completely frozen as fear slowly takes over him, while the geezer casually invites him to join the possessor identification club that he leads, throwing in a smug remark about how Calum surely isn't possessed himself. Calum chooses to stay quiet, and that turns out to be the wisest decision he has ever made, because if he had replied right away, the lie detector active on him would have exposed the truth that he himself has been possessed. The old geezer looks straight at our boy and asks why he's suddenly gone quiet, forcing him to say something by pointing out that it really doesn't seem like a difficult question to answer. As Malini repeats himself with that same calm yet creepy tone, Calum starts getting more and more uneasy, wondering how on earth he's supposed to escape the situation. He had gotten a little too full of himself just because he managed to walk out of the labyrinth alive, and now it feels like that confidence might end up costing him his life. He starts questioning where exactly he messed up and whether he should have spent more time understanding this world before coming anywhere near this place. Meanwhile, the old geezer keeps pushing for a proper answer, and just when it starts looking like Calum's completely cornered, Clarence walks in, greeting the old man and stepping in with a perfectly timed save by saying that the poor kid probably hasn't gotten his head straight yet after just making it out of the labyrinth. He adds that trying to recruit Calum the moment he gained his freedom seems a little too rushed. The old geezer poetically responds with a smug little line, saying that a diligent farmer never wastes time when it comes to harvesting a promising crop, and asks if Clarence's professor Isolaf is also interested in Calum. Clarence gladly says yes and argues that with talent like his, who wouldn't be? He then adds that Calum's abilities seem far more suited for something like labyrinth exploration, rather than going around hunting the possessed. Seeing his prized catch being taken away, the old geezer clearly doesn't take it well, and starts getting visibly annoyed. But Clarence smoothly steps in and pulls Calum out of the mess, by suggesting that he should at least listen to an offer from his own professor's club before deciding where he wants to go. Luckily for our guy, he gets saved right in the nick of time and now finds himself walking alongside Clarence to meet the other professors. On the way, Calum starts wondering if there's a spell out there that can simply detect possessed individuals, and if such a thing exists, how easy it would actually be to identify them. But the fact that Malini tried to question him while having lie detection magic active irritates him more than anything else, especially since it pretty much confirms that no such simple detection spell exists in the first place. Calum grits his teeth and mutters under his breath, cursing Malini for trying to mess with him like that. Just then, Clarence casually mentions that it seems the lie detection magic has finally worn off. He then apologizes for the late introduction, and tells Calum that he's a graduating mage and also happens to be the older brother of Avison, the boy Calum saved. He expresses his gratitude to our guy for helping them retrieve the body and saving his little brother just in time. The big brother then starts by apologizing for the long and awkward silence, saying that he finds it extremely impolite to have a proper conversation with someone while they're still under the effect of a lie detection spell. He explains that most people actually see that spell as downright offensive, which is why its use has been banned for the general public and is now limited only to situations like slave team evaluations. Clarence also apologizes for the way the old geezer treated him, admitting that only a small number of people truly hate the otherworldly possessed to the point of being obsessed, and unfortunately, Malini is one of them. He then goes on to explain that the entire Magic University is more or less divided into 3 major factions, each with its own opinion on the matter. The first faction is led by Malini, who lives and breathes for one purpose, and that is to mercilessly wipe out every single possessed individual he can find. The second one belongs to Professor Isolaf, who supports the idea of helping the possessed survive and navigate the labyrinth like any other explorer. The third and final faction, which seems like it was formed more out of necessity than actual belief, is headed by Professor Dahlstream, who thinks that the otherworldly possessed should be treated with deep respect. This last faction catches our guy's attention the most, and as he starts showing a bit of interest, Clarence begins explaining that the old man leading this group spends his time studying ancient texts and magic tomes. According to what he's uncovered so far, it seems that the possessed people are actually in conflict with the Labyrinth Master. Clarence goes on to say that the Labyrinth Master has the terrifying ability to capture souls and push them into complete madness, making it nearly impossible for anyone to resist its will once they fall under its influence. However, recent findings have brought up the possibility of a mage who might be capable of resisting that madness, and apparently, the guy with the bizarre name Dumbbell Door believes that this mysterious mage is none other than an otherworldly possessed. When Clarence mentions that this mage is referred to as the turn-based mage, it sends our guy straight into a full-blown sweat. Clarence continues by saying that this so-called turn-based mage is believed to be able to pause the physical world and operate purely through rational thought, as if the normal rules of time and movement don't apply to him. He does admit, though, that no one has ever actually found this mage, and that the entire theory comes from a cryptic scribble found in an ancient text, which means it might all just be a myth. The guy adds that the ancient text is filled with confusing and barely understandable words, which is probably why only 2 other people have bothered to join this painfully dull faction. Calum can't help but mock it, wondering out loud if something that tiny could even be called a faction at all. Clarence responds that the only reason it still holds that title is because everyone chooses to show some courtesy, since the old Dumbledore professor is a senior faculty member and insists on calling it that. Clarence then asks Calum to follow him so he can finally meet his professor, Isolaf, who has been waiting for him. Once inside the room, the professor immediately starts promoting his club, clearly trying to make it sound more impressive than the other 2. He explains that their group focuses on discovering secret rooms and hidden monsters inside the labyrinth, and at the moment, their main research centers around possessed adventurers, not the otherworldly ones. He goes on to clarify that by possessed, he's referring to beings like Mr. Back-Attack, who exist in a state where they can't be clearly defined as either alive or dead. The professor shares his theory that these individuals still have their souls lingering somewhere in this world, and he believes those souls have been trapped deep within the labyrinth. Hearing all this, our guy starts putting the pieces together and realizes that if even someone at the level of a professor doesn't know about this, then the knowledge about the Sanctuary of Souls hasn't been discovered yet. Isilov thanks Kalem for bringing in the corpse of Back Attack, saying it has given them a solid opportunity to track the soul and possibly prove his hypothesis right. The professor does everything he can to hype Kalem up and convince him to join the club before finally asking if he wants to team up with them and help locate the missing soul. For a pro gamer like Kalem, this whole soul hunting thing sounds laughably simple, considering he's done it countless times in quests back in the game. In the game, he used to recruit possessed adventurers as companions after restoring their souls, and now he wonders if the same thing might be possible here too. He starts weighing the benefits of sticking around and enrolling in the university, and with that, it's time for him to make a choice about which faction to join. He immediately crosses out the old geezers group, thinking it's just safer to stay away from that walking headache. The Dollstream faction doesn't sound all that exciting either, with all the pointless rambling about reverence, which basically leaves Isilov's faction as the only reasonable choice left. Kalem confirms if he would be allowed to form his own party for club activities, and even though the professor finds it a little unusual since most students usually try to join a senior's party, he still agrees without making a fuss. With his condition accepted, Kalem happily joins the club without wasting a second. Later that same night, over at the dormitory of the magic school, Kalem is shown to his assigned room. The assistant lady politely tells him to get some rest, knowing he must be completely exhausted by now. But the moment Kalem steps inside the dorm, he's left stunned and completely speechless. It is the kind of place that screams luxury, even bigger than the villa he once lived in. Before the assistant walks away, he quickly asks if the party members he recruits could stay by his side. The lady chooses to ignore the question entirely and quietly takes her leave without saying a word. Our hero finally settles into the bath and takes a moment to enjoy the luxury he has landed in, feeling genuinely happy that he escaped the labyrinth, saved the girl, and even managed to free himself. All this good fortune coming at him one after the other feels almost too good to be true. He decides that he needs to learn more about this world and makes up his mind to visit the library. He also plans to stop by the admission office tomorrow and pick up Yernil. As he sinks deeper into the warm bath, it finally starts to feel like the tutorial is over, and the real journey is just about to begin. The next day, Kalem shows up to class looking completely out of it. It's pretty clear the guy pulled an all-nighter digging through books in the library, and now he's running purely on fumes. He keeps thinking about how close he came to getting caught during that lie detection mess, and tells himself he can't afford to let his guard down like that ever again. Right in the middle of his thoughts, Dumbledore, who turns out to be the one teaching the lecture, suddenly calls him out and asks if he's the new student who's already become famous all over campus. The old man then introduces himself as one of the university's resident hermits and moves on with the lesson. He begins by explaining a spell called Memories, which is used to summon something known as a memory book. After that, he tells everyone to sign the contract being handed out by the assistant so they can each receive their own book. The old guy asks the students to summon their books and check how many slots they have available, explaining that the number of slots depends on the caster's level. Since Kalem is currently at level 5, he ends up receiving 3 magic slots for now. After everyone finishes getting their spell slots, the old man tells them that while they can only learn a number of spells equal to their slots, there's also the option of mixing those spells together to come up with entirely new ones. Without bothering to explain further, he suddenly claims he's not feeling too well and hands over all the teaching duties to his assistant Scarlet, using his so-called illness as the perfect excuse to slack off and disappear from the scene. Scarlet, who already looks like she's carrying the entire school on her back, has no choice but to accept whatever Dumbledore throws at her, knowing full well there's no way to argue back. She then gathers everyone without wasting time and leads the whole class out to the training grounds. Once there, she starts walking them through the method of combining 2 basic spells into what she calls a second-class spell, and explains that this technique of crafting stronger magic is known as spellbook binding. She adds that one major upside of this process is that the resulting spell doesn't even take up a slot, making it way more efficient than it sounds. While she admits the whole thing might seem a bit too much for beginners to handle, she continues by explaining that it's also technically possible to bind 3 spells together as well. However, she's quick to point out that this triple binding method is a massive pain with a ridiculously low success rate, which pretty much makes it a gamble that most people don't bother taking. She then demonstrates a spell created through triple binding, explaining that this is the only known method where someone can merge all 3 attributes at once and use them in perfect sync. Watching her unleash a majestic triple attribute blast gets everyone fired up, and Scarlet, clearly feeling herself, stands there all proud like she just pulled off a grand finale. She tells them that with enough effort and proper training, they could eventually cast such powerful spells too. After that, she hands over a list of first-class spells and asks everyone to pick the ones they want. She adds that they can buy a spellbook from the magic bookstore to actually learn those spells. Once that's done, she leaves them to work at their own pace, saying they can come to her if they hit any trouble. Later on, when Calum shows up and presents the 3 spells he has chosen, Scarlet's first reaction is one of surprise. It's not every day a complete newbie walks in with 3 slots unlocked. But the second she reads the actual combination he wants to go with, her face drops. Out of all the incredible spells available, Calum somehow picked a set that looks like it belongs in a comedy sketch, especially with a humidify spell thrown in, which is practically useless in a fight. Scarlet immediately causes a stir and heads straight to Dumbbell Door, showing him the absurd combination and pointing out how it looks like something a toddler would cook up just for the fun of it. The professor gives a smug little smirk like he actually approves of the combination and calmly tells her that the true strength of a magician lies in their curiosity and willingness to research. He adds that the University of Magic always welcomes fresh approaches when it comes to spellbook binding, no matter how weird or unconventional they might seem. With that, he wishes Calum the best of luck and strolls off without a care. Later that night, Calum returns to his dorm after getting his newly purchased spellbooks registered into his memory slots. Once he's settled in, he finally sits down to begin the spellbinding process. The first spell he ends up creating is called Dust Explosion, formed by combining Bullet Shot with Hot Wind. While neither of those spells is impressive on their own due to their low lethality, fusing them turns the result into something many times stronger than your average fireball. Next, he takes Hot Wind and merges it with Humidify, accidentally creating a spell called Scorching Heat, which wasn't something he expected but still sounds solid. For the final combination, he decides to go all in and merges all 3 spells together, resulting in a spell called the Book of Cumulonimbus. The last time he had used this particular build was back when he challenged himself with one of the most brutally difficult modes in the game. The final spell Calum creates, called Cumulonimbus, forms a massive thundercloud that summons lightning from above, and now he cannot wait to test it out using his Hourglass special skill. He decides that first thing tomorrow morning, he will stop by the shop to get himself a proper lightning wand, and once that is done, he plans to pick up what he considers his most important asset, Urnil. The next day at the Adventurers Guild, Urnil is called out and informed that a client is interested in buying her for labyrinth exploration. The news sends a wave of dread through her as she starts imagining what kind of person would want to buy her, and what awful things they might have in mind. Her thoughts spiral into every shady possibility she can think of, and the panic builds up until suddenly she hears someone call her name and say that he missed her terribly. She looks up and nearly jumps out of her skin when she sees Calum sitting there, completely calm as if he has all the time in the world. Shocked and thrilled, she runs to him and asks what he is doing here and whether something went wrong at the university. Calum smiles and says he would never leave behind a teammate who fought beside him and risked her life. He raises his hand toward her and promises that he is here to make her a free citizen by buying back her freedom with his own gold. For Calum to officially make Urnil a free citizen, there are 2 possible routes he can take. The first one is to collect the body retrieval reward from Avacyn. When Urnil hears this, she immediately asks if that reward had not already been taken care of. Calum explains that Avacyn's older brother had only paid 100 gold upfront, and that the rest is still pending. But he is pretty confident that once the full amount is received, Urnil's share will come out to more than 100 gold, enough to cover the cost of her freedom. Until that happens, Calum knows he cannot risk letting any other party claim her. The second option she has is to join him in the labyrinth, and if she manages to pay off her remaining debt with the rewards from their next expedition, she could earn her freedom that way. He believes that having her by his side again would be the ideal situation, and to make that happen, he even hands her a brand new bow. For a moment, though, he senses a bit of hesitation in her eyes and starts to worry that she might reject the offer and walk away from the party. But what happens instead completely surprises him. She looks at him and asks if it is really okay for her to keep following him. Then, with her voice full of determination, she shouts that she wants to be called Calum's comrade and joins him on his journey without a second thought. Calum smiles and tells her that he has already found their final party member, which instantly gets her all excited as she eagerly asks who it could be. Back at the academy dorms, he lets her stay over for the night. After he tells her to make herself at home, Urnil is super happy with the new clothes and shiny gear she got practically for free in return for some drowning debt, of course. Even then, she's thrilled she gets to live in what basically looks like a 5-star hotel and work in the labyrinth with Calum. But the thing she looks forward to the most is a private bathtub. Sadly, her hype quickly dies down as a zombie back attack pops up and makes her scream her guts out. She yells at Calum, demanding why there is a monster in his dorm, and he simply tells her to calm her melons, explaining that he asked the sketchy professor to use a necromancy scroll on back attack instead of letting the talented rogue go to waste. Hearing the zombie groan, Calum tells her it's obviously saying hi, but she straight up tells him either back attack goes or she does, but he hits her with a big fat nope. It is explained that according to the professor's book, There was a major eruption 12 years in the past, and that resulted in countless deaths from the 3,000 or so monsters that broke out from the labyrinth. Behind all this was apparently an otherworlder named Henry, who lived in the slums, and the guards found signs of a fight near his body, which was thoroughly mutilated. Next to it was a note to all otherworlders, warning them to stay away from the Magic University. At first, Calum thought it was weird for him to leave a message like that in English, but it keeps bugging him that there might be something much more sinister going on inside the university besides regular research. The place most damaged by the eruption was the Magic University. Maybe it was because it was at the front lines and faced the brunt of the attack. But there's also a lingering theory in his head that the monsters turned to hunt the other migrators hiding inside the university after they killed Henry. Thinking Malini is the most sus figure in the whole place, Calum starts brainstorming ways to keep his identity as an otherworlder hidden when Yurnal suddenly shows up in his room looking like she had the worst nightmare of her life. She begs him to let her sleep with him because the brain-dead zombie tried to eat her brains, and he flat out rejects her even though she does her most cutely menacing face. Then, he tells her she can stay on one condition, and casually drops a bunch of scrolls in front of her, saying that he bought them all from the black market and would really appreciate a loyal assistant to help him test all of them out. Meanwhile, the professors are having a discussion about a top-secret project on tracking the otherworldly migrators, and Isilov surprises the old geezer by saying someone actually took the crazy quest. Then he adds that the one who took it is none other than the star of their university, who is currently forming his own party. Malini finds that seriously suspicious and doubts that the newcomer is just a lucky genius, sharing the story he heard about how Calum used an ice spike at the perfect time to freeze the boss's venom sac like never done before, and that the same kid even took down the infamous back attack solo. Annoyed, the old man claims there is no explanation other than that he is a migrator and insists it's their duty to punish him, but Isilov flatly refuses to sacrifice a talented mage's future based purely off of suspicion. Hearing that, the old man cools down slightly, but he says it is strange that the entrance exam didn't get that many candidates recently, and walks out, reminding Isilov that the reason they are so low on manpower is because of a single troublemaker from 12 years ago, so he refuses to let Calum go unobserved. After he leaves, Isilov ponders over things for a moment, and thinks that while Malini had a valid point, it's also a fact that the university is in deep need of someone who can explore the labyrinth and bring back valuable information to the university, and he wonders quietly if Calum will succeed in his ambitious attempt. The next day, our hero is surprised to see that someone actually applied to his party, considering it's run by a rookie mage who just recently got out of slavery. Standing behind him is Yurnal and Zombie Back Attack, who is attracting all kinds of weird looks from everyone else in the building. Our boy thinks he should reveal the truth to his party members when the time comes, while Back Attack nibbles on Yurnal's ears like they're cotton candy. Having waited long enough, Back Attack and everyone else turn to our hero as he announces that he plans to search for the place where his zombie's soul is being kept on his next expedition, and for that, he desperately needs a proper tank warrior. He tells all of the applicants to lift the heavy barrel as their first test to qualify, since he can't check the stats of people not in his party, so he'll just make them throw a barrel, thinking of how dumb strong the dwarf was. After that, he'll make them demonstrate their shield charge and taunt skills. After his bold announcement, he asks who thinks they are up for the job, and the crowd that was so hyped suddenly starts having doubts, and it quickly becomes clear that the qualifications he just listed have already cleared out half the candidates. But this is honestly the best way, as warriors, archers, and rogues can only gain skill by surviving in the labyrinth, so it serves as undeniable proof. Yurnal whispers that even she doesn't fit the criteria, but he calmly tells her she'll get there soon enough. Suddenly, a dwarf starts an uproar at the absolute balls our boy has to demand so much after only surviving once in the labyrinth himself. But then, the lizard man named Bernard from before politely asks the dwarf to piss off. Instantly recognizing him, the others around question Bernard on why a paladin from the Temple of Nathaniel would ask to join a first-floor party when he already managed to get to the second floor. But our hero already knows exactly why the paladin is after them, as the Temple of Nathaniel refuses to let any necromancer or his undead roam freely and unchecked. Suddenly, Bernard starts crying to his Lord Nathaniel, saying it is fate for him to be chosen, but a rough-looking swordsman appears behind the lizard man and tells him to stop yapping like a madman. The man introduces himself as Hijikata the Blade, and states he is actually an explorer on the third floor, but he wants to search for a dear friend of his who went missing, and if Calum somehow succeeds in reviving Back Attack, that will help him out immensely in finding a way to his friend. And our boy finds the third-floor adventurer a great potential ally as well. Still, he does not want to hire anyone who will just leave his party right after the expedition, and he wonders to himself how he can find someone willing to join him for the long term. Just then, a fat bald man with eyes like Brock appears dramatically and states he wants to give an interview. Hijikata and Bernard doubt if he seriously thinks he can compete, but the monk yells that he absolutely has to join the party no matter what. Our boy is genuinely surprised seeing the dedicated monk practically begging him for an interview, and reveals the sudden bombshell that Backattack was actually his brother from another mother. The bald monk admits that Backattack died because of him, and explains that the famous first-floor adventurer stayed with his party for a solid 3 years because he loved their party more than going up the higher floors. Over time, the monk felt like he was wrong, and thought maybe he was holding the great guy back, so one day they told him he should leave instead of wasting his talent on a bunch of noobs like them. At that time, the red-headed rogue gave them a cheery smile and acted like he was just fine, and 3 weeks after that the monk's party gets attacked by plunderers who tried to trap them by shutting the dungeon gate. Still, one of the girls somehow managed to get out and reported at the guild, and because Backattack was there, he instantly rushed to the new entrance gate. Meanwhile, the monk lost his teammates and gave up on life at the last second. But suddenly a mysterious gate appeared behind him, and out came a demon laughing with a monstrous grin stretched across its face. The monk ran in fear while Backattack, who was changed beyond recognition, sliced up the plunderers like they were just practice dummies made of tissue paper. That guilt is exactly why the monk claims he absolutely must be the one to help on the mission to reclaim his comrade's soul and dignity. Surprised, Calum thinks that roaming bosses like what happened to Backattack normally only appear on the deep labyrinth floors, and he has never in history heard reports of one spawning on the first floor. With the guilt eating him alive, the monk says he's been feeling horrible every single day since then and grabs zombie Backattack. With tears in his eyes, he asks the drooling zombie if he really came back to help them after everything that happened, and even sold his soul to the Labyrinth Master just for his old comrades who once abandoned him. Seeing him fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness, Hijikata gives up and says he clearly deserves to go. But Bernard starts shouting that the monk is trying to delete the competition by winning pity points, and he refuses to yield unless the monk can break the barrel. Our boy thinks that's a bit unreasonable as monks normally build agility instead of pure strength. Seeing the big, beautiful man crush the barrel with his bare hands, Calum suddenly realizes he is a strength monk. Exactly the kind of frontliner he was secretly hoping for. With that, the party is finally complete, and our hero tells the monk Amos to get prepared before they set out. The big guy casually says he has to get permission from his wife first, so our boy tells him to go handle that, and tells Yurnil to head back to the dorms. She asks where he's going, to which he replies that he needs to handle some business at the university before they dive in. On his way, he thinks that if there really is a secret organization of otherworlders hidden inside the university, then they are the biggest danger to him right now. Especially because he's in the spotlight after making strange magic combinations, taking Professor Iselov's insanely difficult quests, and recruiting an old monk as his frontliner out of 40 amazing choices. But all those flashy moves are calculated on purpose, as he wants them to suspect he's a migrator. He heads inside thinking that he needs to clear his name once and for all if he wants to maintain his 1-in-a-million genius status. And the person who'll help him do that is none other than cranky old man Malini. The moment Malini spots him, the old man questions whether the newbie really succeeded in spellbinding, and Calum casually admits it like it's absolutely nothing. The geezer taunts it as dumb luck, so our boy decides to push his buttons and says it must be luck because double binding wasn't a big deal and triple binding was a joke, leaving Malini completely bamboozled. That pisses the old man off so badly he declares it's all a lie unless Calum is blessed by the Lord of Wisdom, and Professor Dahlstream shows up from behind saying maybe Calum really is blessed by the stars themselves. But old man Malini is dead serious and declares it's preposterous for him to pull off triple spellbinding unless he's a migrator. Isilov asks the senile fool what the hell he thinks he's doing, but Malini loudly announces that he will use lie detection magic in front of everyone and force Calum to prove he is a filthy otherworlder, promising to apologize in full and pay our boy back big time if he's wrong, though if he is right, he will execute him on the spot. Not impressed in the slightest, our boy tells the senile man to quit yapping and start the testing. Malini casts the spell, and Calum shouts at the top of his lungs that he really is a migrator from another world right in front of the whole school. Right then, he stops time and scoffs that Malini actually used the spell exactly like he expected. This moment of clarity also allows Calum to determine if there really are any other migrators in the room. First, he looks at Professor Isilov, who seems to be fully on his side, while old man Malini is just an overly fired-up geezer. Professor Dahlstream's unreadable face is as unreadable as ever, while Professor Enver's overly excited grin looks like a massive red flag. In the last 5 seconds of frozen time, our boy executes his genius plan and spits out the one lie he knows will hurt the least: that Labyrinth Abyss is the best game he's ever played. His time runs out, and an intense shock tears through his body as time resumes because he lied. As he falls to the ground in agony, Isilov rushes to help Calum and announces it's official that he is not a migrator, leaving Malini utterly and hilariously speechless. A week passes by, and Yurnal asks our hero if he really is okay because he was comatose for a solid 2 days after the massive shock. But it was all totally worth it to get an apology from that stuck-up old man, as well as the Compass of Grade as proper compensation. True to its name, the compass is a legendary tool that guides the user toward treasure chests in the labyrinth, with even more special effects at higher levels. While he isn't sure what kind of effects the compass will eventually unlock, Calum is pretty sure finding a legendary item is going to be a whole lot easier now. With that, he finally heads into the labyrinth with his new comrades by his side. However, they get a surprise as soon as they step inside. Calum sees a group of adventurers huddled up and whispering about something, so he asks Yurnal if she can hear anything. She says they're surprised to see how shabby the party looks compared to the flashy rumors. Just then, the bowl-cut girl walks up and greets his party, politely asking if she can have a minute of his time before they head in. Calum instantly clocks them as trash-tier looters looking to rob his rookie party blind. And avoiding lowlifes like these is exactly why he tried to be the first one to enter as soon as the gate opened. Our hero grits his teeth, and when the girl asks what he's got in his bag, he tells her to mind her own darn business. The shady lady warns him that the labyrinth is full of looters, so if he's got anything valuable he's afraid to lose. She's a friendly hot lady happy to keep it safe on her. Surprisingly, Amos is the one who steps up and tells the flat as a bored little girl to piss off, because his leader isn't some clueless fool, and he could easily turn filthy thieves like them into barbecue if he felt like it. That really ticks her off, so she leaves with a scoff saying it was just some harmless advice, and to Calum's surprise, she and her sketchy party enter the labyrinth without saying another word. Once they go inside, Yurnal quietly asks if they really were plunderers, but he tells her not to worry, because he can rely on her ears to hear them creeping up any time. However, a loud cry for help suddenly echoes, and our hero quickly turns to spot an adventurer running toward them, screaming that a looter is after them. It turns out to be the shady girl from earlier, but he calls Cap and demands a single good reason why he should help her now, as she drops to her knees and begs. He thinks he would have roasted her to a crisp before she got a word out if this were just a game, but he decides to humor her and asks why he should help a trashy thief like her now. She admits to being rude earlier but swears she got ambushed by bad men even Diddy gets nightmares of, which manages to make Yurnal feel bad for her despite everything. Calum thinks it's possible she isn't lying, but trust in the labyrinth is the fastest shortcut to a dramatic, pointless death. With a cold, sharp glare, he tells the thought to be gone if she doesn't want to get blasted by his magic to the count of 3. The harpy keeps begging him with her best damsel in distress impression, but by the time he counts to 2, she quickly turns to leave with a pout. Just then, Yurnal's twitchy little ears pick up someone coming right at them from the front, and the moment she sees them, the woman beside them starts screaming again. With the most pathetic acting in history, she rushes toward Amos, who is momentarily paralyzed on what to do, so Calum quickly asks Yurnal to tell him how many enemies there are, and she estimates there are 4. An arrow comes flying from the darkness, but the Giga Chad monk cuts it down with style, though that tiny opening allows the bowl cut to sneak past him. She pretends to run past our hero before suddenly revealing her true colors. In the blink of an eye, she spins around and holds a stick to his neck, acting all smug about how good her Logan Paul tier acting was. Imus panics hard while the lady brags she used a magic disruption skill to make Calum useless, but our hero calmly orders the monk to keep his eyes on the actual enemy and activates the hourglass. With time now frozen, he breathes a heavy sigh of relief with the attack-nullifying scroll clenched tightly in his hand. He's genuinely impressed at how she used herself as bait and made the smart choice of targeting him first. Pinning his instant cast ability with magic disruption would have made his next attack look like a clown show straight out of a circus. After that, paralyzing Yurnal and getting rid of Amos would have been way too easy, especially while back attack is pitifully weak in his current zombie state. Our boy seriously regrets not giving that scummy woman a painful death earlier. Still, he regains his composure because the lives of his comrades are literally in his hands, and he remembers the critical discovery he made with Yurnal just a few days ago that might change everything. Knowing the 60-second cooldown is way too long for such a dangerous fight, he had prepared himself with a ton of scrolls, and one of them allows him to be free of any status effect, such as magic disruption, in exchange for some serious fatigue. He prepares a lightning bolt spell to dish out some well-deserved punishment just as the timer ends, and the shady lady gets a shocking surprise that leaves both her and the other plunderers staring in dumb confusion. While her legs go weak and she collapses to her knees, our boy thanks her kindly for helping him figure out that his first instinct to fry her alive was absolutely right all along. The only thing she's getting from him now is pain. With tears in her eyes, the ugly little sob begs for forgiveness, and he forgives her all right by blasting her into dust as grimy as her. It's the kind of mercy that comes with a voltage warning. A system notification informs him that he has unlocked the temporary hourglass, while the Wolfman still fails to understand how magic disruption failed so catastrophically. Calum then points his staff toward the incoming fools and unleashes Bloodlust Surge, which gives him another glorious time stop with 2 precious action points. While everyone stares at him in confused horror, he spots the dwarf in the back and realizes he's a puppeteer, which explains why Yurnal heard 4 bodies coming. He uses lightning on one, commands Yurnal to shoot the dwarf, and then follows up with explosion magic on the 3rd goon. As time resumes, the plunderers get hit with a beautiful, explosive surprise, and the dwarf gets shot right in the chest with a satisfying thunk, leaving the dogman sweating harder than a league player in ranked overtime. The fool instantly falls on his hairy cheeks in surrender, arms shaking, and Calum slowly walks toward the tree stump with an arrow sticking out, where the guy is practically begging him for forgiveness already. However, he calmly reminds the guy that he isn't playing Mr. Nice Guy anymore. With his wand politely poking the dwarf's shiny bald head, he unleashes a deadly shock and gives him the full electric chair execution right there on the spot. Later, they set up camp and take a short rest. Yurnal regrets the fact that she was as useless as Aqua the whole time, just standing there in total shock. She slaps her own cheeks and swears she'll become a comrade he can actually be proud of. Just then, our hero wakes up and apologizes for getting knocked out all of a sudden due to the heavy fatigue from the scroll. He notices that Amos has already neatly organized all of the filthy looters' belongings. The big guy asks him what they should take, and even though our boy really wants it all, he decides to only take the potions and light gear because of the annoying carry weight limit. He's pretty impressed though that those trash-tier clowns had 5 full potions, 1 cooldown reduction elixir, and even a rare Raise Dead body scroll. He also notices the Shady Lady's staff has psychokinesis engraved on it, and quietly thinks that giving your weapon a name like that is mad cringe. With that settled, he gets ready to set off again, but Yurnal points out that she can hear the sound of a ticking watch coming from his pocket. He pulls out the treasure compass Malini gave him and explains to the others that it can locate treasure chests hidden deep within secret rooms inside the labyrinth, which leaves both their jaws hanging. Even so, he makes it crystal clear that their first priority is to revive Back Attack, so they can check out hidden loot later, and also tells Yurnal not to panic over every random noise she hears. Feeling a little downhearted, Yurnal mutters that her hearing is the only decent feature she really has, but he assures her that she's a great help to him regardless. Hearing that, she asks if she should report the sound of flowing water too, and Calum absent-mindedly says yes, until it takes him a moment to actually process what she just said. He instantly yells at her to take him there immediately, nearly giving her a heart attack. You see, classes like rogues and warriors need a fountain of blessings, which can spawn randomly anywhere deep inside the labyrinth, and allows adventurers to unlock rare weapon-based special skills. Soon enough, Yurnal leads them to the fountain room and Calum compliments her on the incredible work. Then he asks both her and Amos if they're ready to grab a shiny new skill. While the elf still can't get over his compliment, the monk awkwardly admits he failed to get a skill a couple of times he tried. However, our hero isn't surprised at all, because the hidden condition of the fountain is that it assesses the adventurer not only their stats, but also their actual skill with the equipped weapon. After confirming that Amos hasn't tried it with his current weapon, Calum tells the monk to give it another shot, because his strength is stupidly high and with a great staff in hand, he's bound to finally get a real skill. Although he doesn't fully believe in himself, the bald monk dips his head in the magical water and instantly shouts the very moment he pulls out that he actually did get a new skill called Smashing Gaia. After that, Yurnal dips her head in with high hopes and is ridiculously excited to gain a skill called Triple Shot. Hyped out of her mind, she tells our boy to go next, but he tells her mages can't actually use the fountain at all. Still, he decides to give it a shot anyway just in case things are different from the game, but the main reason is that he always wanted to see what's inside. To his surprise, he sees a mysterious panel informing him he has used the fountain, and it seems that the hourglass counts as his weapon. Because his wisdom is over 10, the fountain allows him to unlock a novice-level skill for the hourglass and gives him some cool choices to pick from. The first one allows him to move his arms if he has a wand in his hand, though he still can't interact with or manipulate objects. The second one allows him to trade 1 second of the timer to reduce an hour from either the hourglass cooldown or a debuff of a skill usable once every hour. The third choice lets him open the memory book and change his spell slots on the fly, with each swap costing an action point. The last one lets him use 2 action points to control his party members, even without having to win their trust. But if the command is deemed unacceptable, the target will temporarily go mad. Seeing these annoyingly confusing skills gives him a headache, but our boy quickly realizes the choice isn't actually that hard if he crosses out the less useful ones. In the end, he chooses the first option, the one that gives him the freedom to move during time stop. Yurnal rushes over in concern, thinking he passed out with how long he took. Our boy instantly tests out the new skill and feels oddly satisfied with its cool effect. After that, They dive even deeper into the labyrinth while literally following back attack from a distance, using the undead rogue as a meat shield to absorb traps like a walking decoy. On the way, Amos casually takes out the charm his wife gave him, and seeing how adorably wholesome the big guy's love life appears, Yurnal gets curious and nosy and asks how a monk managed to lock down a woman. Without hesitation, he shares that he met her at the guild, and that she's the one who got him into back attack's party, which is exactly why she let him go on this mission, even though there's no money in it for him. The big guy says his wifey is the reason why he absolutely has to make it back alive no matter what, which makes our boy slightly concerned that he just set a massive death flag without realizing it. As they continue moving deeper, back attack suddenly begins groaning and chasing something with urgency. Yurnal wonders what caught his attention, and after watching the red-headed rogue start digging wildly at the floor tiles, Calum realizes that his body must be resonating with his missing soul. He guesses the soul is located on floor 1.5, catching Amos off guard that the old rumor might actually be true. Right as our boy is about to reveal the secret method to reach the rumored floor, the bird-brained elf steps on a suspicious tile, because of course she does, causing the monk to panic as the entire chamber begins to rumble and the walls shake violently like they're about to collapse completely. But our boy stays cool as a cucumber and grins, saying they found the entrance pretty easily, as the floor begins to shift and reveals a hidden staircase at the base of which lies a swirling portal to the secret floor 1.5. Inside the portal, they see a strange village with massive buildings that completely stun Yurnal into silent awe. But Calum isn't all that surprised because he's already seen it in the game before, and he warns her they have to move quietly going forward to avoid setting off the sentinels. The Sentinels of the Border are monsters found exclusively on floor 1.5 that surround the player in overwhelming swarms and are basically a guaranteed death sentence. As long as they stay hidden inside the buildings, it is possible to go through undetected, as long as they make absolutely no sound whatsoever. Our hero makes it clear that their job is to silently grab the soul and get out fast, and he's confident he shouldn't get lost since he's seen this place many times in the game already. Sometime later, he finally arrives at the Gothic cathedral known as the Sanctuary of Souls. As he opens the tall iron gates, all seems to be going exactly like it does in the game. Watching the countless jars scattered all over the eerie floor, Yurnal nervously asks what they are, and he casually explains they're jars of jam, except the jam inside is literally souls of the dead. Slightly more than concerned, Amos questions how it's even possible to find the specific soul they're looking for, and our boy casually points toward the only one in the room that's glowing bright gold. Amos doubts if he actually knows what he's talking about, so Calum explains that the moment they grab back attack's soul, monsters will definitely swarm them, and they'll need to haul it back to the first floor at full speed. Hearing that ominous warning, the big guy gets ready for action, but Yurnal shyly points out that she actually sees another shining jar, and innocently asks what they should do now that there's two of them. Amos swears on his bald head that the second one wasn't glowing even a moment ago, and wonders out loud if the Labyrinth Master really trapped another innocent soul. But Calum refuses to believe that nonsense, considering he should still be the most powerful rookie adventurer on the entire first floor. Right as he starts to piece together what that actually means, Yurnal warns him she hears a ton of footsteps heading toward them fast, which confirms someone just died on floor 1.5. Somewhere nearby, a guy yells at his party member to give up on the dead and rush straight to the cathedral to take shelter before it's too late. They slam the massive doors open, and our boy is surprised beyond belief to see a familiar crusty green face appear in the doorway. The dumb lizard man immediately yells at Calum for leaving the doors open when they're in such a dangerous place, while our guy facepalms at the idiot who just doomed them all to a giant monster party. The brain-dead lizard shouts again that the swarm is already coming, making Calum angrier by the second, but he still bothers to ask the lizard man why he's even here right now. Bernard explains that he was sent by the church to explore the labyrinth when he just so happened to stumble upon the hidden staircase leading down. The paladin, clearly suffering from some end-stage brain rot, thanks Lord Nathaniel for the fateful meeting, but his teammate Ramus tells him to shut up and set up the barrier before the monsters get inside. Bernard quickly casts a barrier on the door and asks Calum to assist him in subduing the demons like they're best friends, while our boy just wants to shoot himself right after he finishes shooting the idiot who ruined his peaceful soul retrieval mission. Still, in order to survive this absolute mess, he locks in and tells Bernard to follow his orders for a while, but the mentally challenged lizard man just asks why he would even do that. My guy calmly reminds him that the whole situation is his fault from the beginning, and that convincing logic gets Bernard to listen pretty quick. Our hero then decides he has no choice but to revive back attack immediately now that he needs every single bit of help he can get. So he uses the undead rest scroll from Professor Isilov first to remove the necromancy effect from him, which takes about a minute. Then, he tells Yurnal to get ready to catch the glowing soul jar right after he drops it down gently with his magic. In the meantime, he asks Bernard's party to share what skills they've got, But the little midget shows annoying attitude and boldly states that he takes orders from no one besides great leader Bernard, and that it's the rookie who should be taking orders from His Holiness. That irritating response pisses Calum off instantly, so he asks the divine lizard what big brain plan he cooked up before that got him here, and the guy proudly says they charged courageously straight at the monsters. With a serious look that could cut stone, Calum reminds the fools that a party member literally lost his life thanks to that genius five-head plan. Then, he leaves them all properly shaken by calmly stating he'll also revive their fallen comrade, on the condition that they fully obey him without question. To make it believable, he shows them the glowing jar with the man's soul inside, and convinces the smooth brain squad pretty fast with that alone. Naturally, he says he'll be asking for compensation afterward, but just knowing their precious comrade will be revived is enough to win Bernard's party over, so the midget reveals all their skills. With that, Calum and the rest of his gang prepare for hell to break loose as the barrier and gate teeter at the edge of bursting wide open.